A millionaire's life is turned upside down when he is approached by a desperate little girl asking for help. The young beggar pleads, "Be my daddy for a day." When he finds out what our TM's going on, he nearly faints. The sleek elevator doors of São Paulo's most prestigious business tower slid open with a soft chime. Alexander Morgan stepped out, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. Another successful merger under his belt, another billion added to his empire. Yet the victory felt hollow, like everything else in his life lately. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the lobby in shades of amber and gold. Alexander loosened his tie slightly, a rare gesture of fatigue from a man known for his impeccable composure. At 42, he had everything money could buy, but the emptiness that haunted his penthouse apartment followed him everywhere. "Mr. Morgan, your car is ready," his driver announced through the earpiece. "I'll walk today, James," he replied, surprising even himself. Something about the autumn air called to him, a strange urge he couldn't explain. As he pushed through the revolving doors, the bustling city embraced him with its characteristic chaos. Street vendors, business people, and tourists merged into a symphony of urban life. Alexander checked his Patek Philippe watch, 5:47 p.m. The board meeting had run longer than expected, but for once he didn't mind the delay. He hadn't walked these streets in years, preferring the isolation of his luxury vehicles. But today felt different. Perhaps it was the merger's success, or maybe the date that he tried so hard to forget. Exactly 7 years since Sarah had walked out of his life. Lost in thought, he almost missed the small figure darting between the crowds. Almost. But something about her desperate movement caught his eye. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, her clothes worn but clean, was weaving through the afternoon crowd with the expertise of someone far beyond her years. Alexander froze mid-step. The world seemed to slow down as she passed under a shaft of sunlight, and his heart stopped. Those eyes, that determined set of the jaw, the way she held herself even in obvious distress, she was the spitting image of Sarah. Before he could process this impossible similarity, the girl spotted him. Their eyes met across the busy sidewalk, and something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, impossible. Yet she changed direction immediately, moving toward him with purpose. "Please," she said, grabbing his sleeve with small, trembling fingers. "So they're following me. Help me." Alexander glanced around, his protective instincts suddenly awakened. The crowd continued its endless flow, but he noticed several sharp-suited individuals moving with too much purpose, their eyes scanning the area systematically. "Who's following you?" he asked, kneeling to her level, shocking himself with how natural the gesture felt. The girl's eyes darted around, fear evident in their depths. Then she looked at him with an intensity that struck him to his core. "Please," she whispered, "be my daddy for one day." The words hit him like a physical blow. In her face he saw Sarah's features so clearly it hurt. The same determined chin, the same slight upturn of the nose. Even the way her eyebrows drew together in worry was painfully familiar. "What's your name?" he asked, already knowing he couldn't walk away. "Sophia," she replied, gripping his hand tighter as one of the suited men drew closer. Alexander made a split-second decision that would change his life forever. He stood, keeping Sophia's hand firmly in his, and pulled out his phone. "James, bring the car around, now." As his sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, he helped Sophia inside, noticing how she trembled despite her brave face. The suited men were closing in, but they wouldn't dare make a scene in broad daylight on São Paulo's busiest street. "Where do you live, Sophia?" he asked as James smoothly pulled into traffic. She looked at him with those hauntingly familiar eyes and shook her head. "I can't go back there. They'll find me, and then I'll never see my brother again." Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. "Your brother?" "Lucas," she whispered, tears finally breaking through her brave facade. "They took him away last week. They said if I tried to find him, they'd make sure I never would." The setting sun painted the city in shades of red and gold as they drove away from the financial district. Alexander Morgan, The man who built his empire on calculated decisions and cold logic found himself diving into a mystery that defied all reason. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Sarah's face haunted him, asking silent questions he wasn't sure he was ready to answer. The penthouse suite at the top of Morgan Tower stood silent as Alexander ushered Sophia inside. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of São Paulo's glittering skyline, but the little girl seemed unimpressed by the luxury surrounding her. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in every detail with the wariness of someone far too young to be so cautious. "Are you hungry?" Alexander asked, realizing he had no idea how to care for a child. His personal chef had left hours ago, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd actually used his own kitchen. Sophia nodded hesitantly, her small hands clutching the worn backpack she'd refused to leave behind. "A little," she admitted. Alexander opened his refrigerator, staring at its sparse contents. Among the imported mineral water and protein shakes, he found some eggs and cheese. "How about an omelette?" A ghost of a smile crossed Sophia's face. "My mom used to make those." The past tense wasn't lost on Alexander. "Used to." Sophia's expression clouded over. "Before everything changed. Before they came and said we had to go with them." Alexander's hand stilled over the ingredients. "Who came, Sophia?" But she had already retreated into herself, moving to the window to stare at the city below. Alexander recognized the defense mechanism. He'd perfected it himself over the years. As he prepared the omelette, his mind raced through possibilities. The girl's resemblance to Sarah couldn't be coincidence. The timing, 7 years since their breakup, aligned too perfectly with Sophia's age, but Sarah would have told him if she'd been pregnant. Wouldn't she? His phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from his secretary, Victoria. "Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow morning. Rothschild deal showing irregularities. Call me ASAP." Alexander glanced at Sophia, who had pressed her small hand against the window, tracing the paths. 5 cars far below. The board meeting could wait. For the first time in his career, something felt more important than business. "Here you go," he said, placing the plate on his rarely used dining table. Sophia approached cautiously, but her eyes lit up at the sight of food. As she ate, Alexander noticed details he'd missed earlier. Her clothes, while worn, were of good quality, not what you'd expect from a street child. Her speech was educated, her manners refined. This wasn't a case of simple abandonment. "Sophia," he began gently, "you mentioned your brother, Lucas. Can you tell me what happened?" She pushed her plate away, leaving half the omelette untouched. "They said they were taking us to a better place, a nice house with a family that would care for us. But then they separated us. They put Lucas in a different car." Her voice cracked. "He was crying for me, but they wouldn't let me go to him." Alexander felt an unfamiliar surge of protective anger. "Who are they, Sophia?" "The people from the Institute. They wear nice suits and always smile, but their smiles never reach their eyes." She shuddered. "Miss Helena said it was for our own good, but I heard her talking on the phone. They were going to send Lucas to America and me to Europe. We'd never see each other again." The name triggered something in Alexander's memory. Helena. He'd met a Helena at a charity gala last month, a woman who ran an international adoption agency. She'd been particularly interested in his philanthropic work, suggesting a partnership that his instincts had warned him against. A soft knock at the door made Sophia jump. Alexander squeezed her shoulder reassuringly before checking the security monitor. It was Victoria, his secretary of 15 years. "I know it's late," she said as he opened the door, "but the irregularities in the Rothschild deal can't—" She stopped mid-sentence, noticing Sophia. Something flickered across her face. Recognition? Fear? "Victoria," Alexander said, noting her unusual reaction. "Meet Sophia. She'll be staying with me for a while." Victoria's professional mask slipped back into place, but not before Alexander caught another flash of something in her eyes. "Of course, sir. Should I cancel your meetings for tomorrow?" "No," he replied, studying her carefully. "But I need you to do some research. Find everything you can about an adoption agency run by someone named Helena. And Victoria, he added as she turned to leave. Be discreet. After she left, Alexander found Sophia had fallen asleep on his leather couch, her small form curled around her backpack. He carefully covered her with a cashmere throw, noticing a worn photograph peeking out of her bag. His heart stopped when he saw it. A younger, smiling Sarah held a baby in her arms, while a toddler Sophia beamed at the camera. The image blurred as years of carefully constructed walls began to crumble. What had he missed? What had Sarah been trying to tell him that final day, before he'd dismissed her concerns about his business partner's ethical practices and chosen his empire over their relationship? Alexander Morgan had built his fortune by solving problems with money and influence. But as he watched Sophia sleep, he realized that for the first time in his life, neither wealth nor power might be enough to fix what was broken. Dawn broke over. São Paulo, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. But Alexander hadn't slept. He'd spent the night in his home office, the photograph from Sophia's backpack spread before him like a puzzle piece that refused to fit. His eyes burned from staring at his laptop screen, searching for any trace of Sarah Martinez in social media or news archives from the past 7 years. The sound of small feet padding across expensive hardwood made him look up. Sophia stood in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, clutching her backpack like a shield. "I found the picture," she said quietly, her eyes fixed on the photograph. Alexander nodded, choosing his words carefully. "Sophia, can you tell me about your mother?" The girl's lower lip trembled, but she lifted her chin with familiar determination. "She was the best mom in the world. She used to sing to us every night, even when she was tired from working 2 jobs. Sophia moved closer, pointing to the baby in the photograph. "That's Lucas, he was just born there. Mom said she had to be strong for both of us, but sometimes I heard her crying at night." Alexander's throat tightened. "When did you last see her?" 3 months ago. She got sick." Sophia's voice wavered. "The hospital bills were too much. That's when Miss Helena came with her nice suits and perfect smile. She said she could help, that she knew someone who would pay for Mom's treatment." She stopped, tears spilling down her cheeks. "If what, Sophia?" "If Mom signed some papers about us. She didn't want to, but she was so sick. Miss Helena said it was temporary, just until Mom got better. But then they took Lucas away, and I heard them say Mom would never see us again." Alexander felt ice in his veins. He'd seen similar tactics in hostile corporate takeovers. Find someone vulnerable, offer help with strings attached, then change the terms when they're too desperate to refuse. His phone buzzed. Victoria had sent a message. Found something. Helena Costello, CEO of Global Family Foundations. Major adoption agency. Connections to influential families worldwide. But there's more. Meeting in person only. "Sophia," Alexander said gently, "I need to go to my office for a while. Would you be okay staying here with Mrs. Rodriguez, my housekeeper?" Fear flashed across Sophia's face. "They'll find me if you leave. No one can get into this building without my permission. You'll be safe here, I promise." He knelt to her level. "I'm going to help you find Lucas, but I need you to trust me." "Can you do that?" Sophia studied him with those painfully familiar eyes. "Mom used to say you were the only honest businessman she ever knew, before you stopped calling." The words hit him like a physical blow. Sarah had talked about him? Had she tried to reach him after their breakup? He had changed his numbers, moved offices, thrown himself into expansion projects across 3 continents. Running from memories, he realized now. "I won't disappear this time," he promised, surprising himself with how much he meant it. An hour later, Alexander sat in his corner office listening to Victoria's discoveries with growing concern. "Global Family Foundations looks legitimate on paper," she said, placing a file on his desk. "But I found financial irregularities, large, transfers to offshore accounts, coinciding with international adoptions. And this." She slid a photograph across the desk, Helena Costello shaking hands with Thomas Reed, Alexander's longtime lawyer and friend. "Tom's involved?" "Deeply. He's on their board of directors, though it's hidden behind shell companies." "But Alexander," Victoria hesitated. "There's something else. 7 years ago I saw Sarah. She tried to reach you, came to the office multiple times. Tom said you'd given strict instructions not to let her through. Alexander's world tilted on its axis. I never gave those instructions. I know I found out later, but by then she'd stopped coming. She was different the last time, protective of herself like she was guarding a secret. Victoria met his eyes. She was pregnant, wasn't she? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Before Alexander could respond, his office door burst open. Tom Reed strode in, his usual polished smile firmly in place. "Alex, just heard about our unexpected board meeting. Listen, about the Rothschild deal." He stopped abruptly, seeing the photograph on Alexander's desk. The smile didn't slip, but something shifted in his eyes. "Ah, I see you've met Helena. Remarkable woman, doing such important work for underprivileged children. In fact, we were just discussing potential funding opportunities for your charitable foundation." Alexander kept his face neutral, years of corporate negotiations serving him well. "Interesting timing. I've been considering expanding my philanthropic work." "Perfect." Tom's smile widened. "Helena's actually in town. Why don't we set up a lunch meeting? Say tomorrow?" "Tomorrow's perfect," Alexander replied, matching Tom's fake enthusiasm. "Victoria, clear my schedule." After Tom left, Victoria turned to Alexander. "He knows something's wrong. He'll warn her." "I'm counting on it." Alexander picked up his phone. "Time to call in some favors. Find me everything on Global Family Foundations. Every transaction, every adoption, every connection." Victoria nodded, but hesitated at the door. "Alexander, there's something else you should know. 7 years ago, when Sarah was trying to reach you, I wasn't just your secretary then. I was working with someone else, someone who paid very well to keep certain information from reaching certain people." Alexander felt his blood run cold. "What are you saying, Victoria?" "I'm saying I made mistakes, terrible ones, but I'm trying to make them right." She pulled a worn envelope from her bag. "Sarah gave me this, made me promise to give it to you if anything ever happened to her. I've carried it every day since, waiting for the right moment." Alexander took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter dated 7 years ago and a sonogram image. His eyes blurred as he read Sarah's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Alexander, by the time you read this, you might hate me for what I've kept from you. But they threatened our baby, and I couldn't risk it. Tom showed me the documents. Proof that someone was planning to use our child to control your company. I had to run, had to protect our little miracle. I'm so sorry, all my love, Sarah." The paper crumpled in his grip. "All this time. I'm sorry," Victoria whispered, "but we can still fix this. I know things about Helena, about the foundation. I want to help." Alexander stared at the city sprawling below his window, mind racing. Every business instinct told him not to trust Victoria, but she was offering the one thing he desperately needed: information. "Why now?" he asked, not turning around. "Because of Sophia," Victoria replied softly. "She reminds me of my own daughter, the one they took from me 15 years ago. I never saw her again." Alexander finally turned, seeing the raw pain in Victoria's eyes. "Help me end this, Victoria. Not just for Sophia and Lucas, but for all of them." She nodded, wiping away a tear. "Helena keeps her most sensitive files in a private server at her house. I know how to access it. It's how they controlled us, knowing every detail of our past mistakes. But getting in won't be easy. Leave that to me." Alexander picked up his phone again, scrolling to a number he hadn't used in years. "Time to call an old friend." As the phone rang, he glanced at the photograph still on his desk. Helena and Tom, their practiced smiles hiding ugly secrets. Tomorrow at lunch, they'd expect to find a desperate man willing to pay anything to protect his reputation. Instead, they'd meet someone finally ready to face the truth, no matter the cost. The phone connected, and a gruff voice answered. "Morgan, it's been a while." "Jack," Alexander said, "remember when you said you owed me for Buenos Aires? I need that favor now. How fast can you get to São Paulo?" In his penthouse, Sophia was teaching Mrs. Rodriguez a clapping game, her laughter echoing through rooms that had been silent for too long. Alexander had promised to protect her, and he would. Even if it meant tearing down the very empire he'd spent his life building. The private dining room at Le Jardin buzzed with understated luxury. Alexander adjusted his tie, watching Helena Castello hold court at the center of the table. She was exactly as Sophia had described, immaculately dressed, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Mr. Morgan," Helena purred, "I must say your interest in our foundation is unexpected. You've never shown much inclination toward child welfare before." Tom Reed shifted in his seat beside her, his usual confidence slightly fractured. Alexander caught the subtle glance between them, the silent communication of conspirators. "People change, Helena," Alexander replied, swirling his untouched wine. "Recent events have opened my eyes to certain responsibilities." "Recent events?" Helena's perfectly manicured eyebrow arched. "Do tell." Before Alexander could respond, his phone vibrated. A text from Jack. "In position. Files downloading. You need to keep them there for 20 more minutes." Alexander set down his glass, choosing his next words carefully. "I've been thinking about legacy lately, about what we leave behind." He pulled out a check and slid it across the pristine tablecloth. "I'd like to make a substantial donation to your foundation." Helena's eyes widened at the number of zeros, but her smile remained calculated. "That's incredibly generous, but surely you'd like to know more about our operations first." "Oh, I intend to know everything," Alexander said pleasantly. "In fact, I'd like to join your board of directors." Tom choked on his wine. "Alex, that's not necessary. The foundation prefers silent partners." "I insist," Alexander cut in. "After all, with a donation of this size, I believe I'm entitled to some oversight, unless there's a reason I shouldn't be involved." The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Helena's smile flickered for just a moment before returning, brittle as glass. "Of course not. We'd be honored, though our board positions do require extensive background checks. For the children's safety, you understand." "Naturally," Alexander agreed. "I have nothing to hide, do you?" Another text buzzed. "Got them. Get out now." Helena's phone chimed simultaneously. The color drained from her face as she read the message. "If you'll excuse me, there's an urgent matter." "Sit down, Helena." Alexander's voice turned to steel. "We're not finished." "Actually, we are." She stood, gathering her designer bag. "Tom, handle this. Mr. Morgan, I'm afraid I must rescind our lunch invitation, and do keep in mind, reputation is everything. In our world, it would be a shame if certain rumors about you started circulating, especially regarding your new house guest." Alexander felt his jaw clench but kept his voice steady. "Are you threatening me? Consider it friendly advice. Some doors are better left closed." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Morgan, give Sophia my regards." After they left, Alexander sat alone in the private dining room, his untouched meal growing cold. His phone buzzed again, Victoria this time. "Jack got everything," she reported, "but Alexander, it's worse than we thought. The files, the connections, and this goes higher than Helena, much higher." "How high?" "Supreme Court judges, politicians, CEOs, they're all connected to the foundation somehow. And there's something else. I found Sarah's file." Alexander's heart stopped. "What does it say?" "It's encrypted, but there's a name that keeps appearing. Alongside it, Project Legacy. Whatever they did 7 years ago, it wasn't just about Sarah, it was part of something bigger." Alexander loosened his tie, feeling the weight of what they'd stumbled into. "Send everything to my private server. And, Victoria, be careful. They'll know someone breached their system by now." Back at his penthouse, Alexander found Sophia curled up in his home library, surrounded by books. She looked up as he entered, her face brightening. "You're back. Mrs. Rodriguez taught me to make brigadeiros. We saved some for you." The simple domesticity of the moment struck him hard. This little girl, who had every reason to be broken by what life had thrown at her, still found joy in small things, still trusted, still hoped. "Sophia," he said gently, sitting beside her, "I need to ask you something important. Do you remember anyone ever mentioning something called Project Legacy?" Her face went absolutely still. "That's what Miss Helena called us, the Legacy children. She said we were special, that we'd been chosen." Sophia's voice dropped to a whisper. But I heard her talking once. She said we were perfect leverage. What does that mean? Before Alexander could answer, his security system chimed. Someone was requesting access to his private elevator. Someone whose clearance had just been revoked. Sir, his AI system announced, Mr. Reed is here to see you. Sophia grabbed Alexander's hand, fear radiating from her small frame. Don't let him in, please. He's one of them. Alexander squeezed her hand reassuringly. Sophia, remember how I promised to protect you? That's exactly what I'm going to do, but first, I need you to be very brave and do exactly what I say. She nodded, her chin lifting with that familiar determination that broke his heart every time he saw it. Mrs. Rodriguez will take you through the service entrance. There's a car waiting with someone I trust completely. They'll take you somewhere. Safe until I deal with this. But what about you? Alexander managed to smile. Don't worry about me, Pequeña. I've been playing corporate games for a long time, and it's about time Tom Reed learned exactly who he's dealing with. Victoria's hands trembled as she sorted through the encrypted files on her secure laptop. After sending Sophia to safety with Jack's most trusted associate, she'd retreated to her modest apartment, converting her dining room into a command center of sorts. The Project Legacy files were a maze of shell companies, offshore accounts, and carefully worded legal documents. But patterns were emerging, and they painted a disturbing picture. Each legacy child had a connection to someone powerful, someone with something to lose. Her phone buzzed. It was Alexander waiting to confront Tom Reed. I found something, she said without preamble. 7 years ago, there was a series of hostile takeover attempts against major corporations. One failed when the CEO suddenly changed course, making decisions that went against their company's interests. And each CEO had a connection to global family foundations. Blackmail, Alexander breathed. They're using the children as leverage. Yes, but it's more than that. The children aren't random. They're chosen. Each one has a biological connection to someone influential, someone who doesn't know they exist. Victoria heard Alexander's sharp intake of breath. Sophia is yours, she confirmed. The DNA tests in her file are conclusive. But Alexander, there's more. Lucas, he isn't just Sophia's brother. He's her twin. Silence stretched across the line. Finally, Alexander spoke, his voice raw. Why separate them? Double the leverage. According to these files, they were planning to use Sophia to control you, and Lucas to control... Victoria's voice caught. To control Sarah. They've been playing a long game, Alexander. Everything that happened 7 years ago, Sarah's sudden departure, the threats, the missing messages, it was all orchestrated. By Tom. No, he's just another player. The real mastermind is... A sharp crack split the air. Victoria's window exploded inward, showering her with glass. She dropped to the floor, heart pounding, as her laptop sparked and sizzled, a neat hole through its center. Victoria! Victoria! Alexander's voice called from the dropped phone. She crawled toward it, keeping low. I'm here. Someone just shot my laptop. Alexander, they know. They know we have the files. Get out of there, now. Use the protocol we discussed. Victoria was already moving, grabbing her pre-packed emergency bag from under the sink. What about you? Tom is about to learn why. You don't challenge a Morgan on his own territory. Be safe, Victoria, and thank you for everything. The line went dead. Victoria slipped through her back door into the gathering dusk, her mind racing. The encrypted backup drive felt heavy in her pocket, heavy with secrets that could bring down an empire of corruption, but could also get them all silenced. Meanwhile, in his penthouse office, Alexander Morgan stood at his window, watching. The city lights flickered to life. Behind him, his private elevator hummed, carrying Tom Reed to what the lawyer undoubtedly thought would be a simple intimidation meeting. Alexander's phone chimed with a message from Jack. Sophia secure. Location Echo 7. Proceeding with Phase 2. Good. One less thing to worry about. Alexander turned as his office door opened, revealing Tom Reed's familiar silhouette. 7 years, Tom, Alexander said quietly. 7 years of lies. Alex, let's be reasonable here. Tom spread his hands in a gesture of peace that fooled neither of them. Whatever you think you know, I know everything. Alexander's voice could have frozen fire. About Sarah, about the children, about Project Legacy. The only thing I don't know is why. Why help them destroy lives? Was the money that good? Something shifted in Tom's expression, the mask of geniality falling away to reveal something harder, colder. You really don't get it, do you? This was never about money, this is about power, real power. The kind that makes presidents bow and kings bend knee. By stealing children? By controlling the future? Tom's smile was terrifying in its sincerity. Every child in Project Legacy is special, Alex. Chosen. The next generation of power brokers raised to serve a greater purpose. And your twins. They're the crown jewels. Do you have any idea what Sarah's genetic profile combined with yours produced? Intelligence off the charts, leadership qualities emerging years ahead of schedule. They're perfect. Alexander's hands clenched. They're children, Tom, not experiments. They're the future, and if you're smart, you'll walk away now. Take the deal Helena offered. A generous donation, a board seat, and we forget this unfortunate incident. Sophia returns to the program, and you go back to your comfortable life. And if I refuse, Tom's smile widened, then the board meeting tomorrow morning becomes very interesting. Did you know the Rothschild deal wasn't the only one with irregularities? Amazing what a skilled lawyer can hide in the fine print over. 7 years. One signature from me, and Morgan Enterprises becomes a spectacular headline about corporate fraud. You'd lose everything. Alexander walked to his desk, pressed a button. Hidden speakers crackled to life, playing back Tom's entire confession. Maybe, but you'd lose more. The color drained from Tom's face. You wouldn't dare. The people behind this should be very afraid right now. Because you're right about one thing, Tom. I am my father's son. And you seem to have forgotten what happened to the last group that tried to take something from Jonathan Morgan. Alexander's smile was cold as Arctic wind. Now, let's talk about where my son is. The recording of Tom's confession echoed through Alexander's office, each damning word hanging in the air between them. Tom's carefully constructed facade had crumbled, revealing the calculating manipulator beneath. You have no idea what you're doing, Alex, Tom said, his voice eerily calm. For these people, they don't play by your rules. No, Alexander agreed, they play with children's lives. Tell me where Lucas is. Tom laughed, a hollow sound. Or what? You'll ruin me? Go ahead. I'm just one piece in a much larger game. Even if you take me down, you'll never find him. The adoption's already processed. As far as the world's concerned, Lucas Morgan no longer exists. Alexander's phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. Found him. Adoption records show transfer to Riverside Children's Home, Massachusetts. But Alexander, it's a shell. The building doesn't exist. Interesting timing, Tom observed, watching Alexander's expression. Let me guess. Victoria found the Massachusetts records. Did she tell you about her own role in all this? About what she did before she worked for you? She already told me everything. Did she? Did she tell you about Project Genesis? About why we chose her to be your secretary 7 years ago? Tom's smile was razor sharp. Victoria Santos isn't just an employee, Alex. She's patient zero, the original proof of concept for Project Legacy. Alexander kept his face neutral, but his mind raced. What was Tom playing at? 20 years ago, Tom continued, Victoria was just another desperate single mother. Her daughter showed extraordinary potential, just like your twins. We offered her a choice, give up the child for the program or lose everything. Sound familiar? You're lying. Am I? Ask her about Elena Santos. Ask her what really happened to her daughter. Tom straightened his tie. Better yet, ask her about Sarah. Ask her who really kept your girlfriend's messages from reaching you 7 years ago. Who really made sure Sarah couldn't warn you about the pregnancy. Alexander's finger hovered over the intercom. One press and security would take Tom away, but something held him back. Why are you telling me this? Because, old friend, you need to understand the stakes. This isn't about one lawyer, one agency, or even one country. Project Legacy is the future, a carefully curated generation of exceptional children raised to serve a greater purpose. Your twins are just the latest additions to a very exclusive family. They're not additions, they're hostages. Perspective, Alex. We give these children opportunities they'd never have otherwise. The best education, the best training, access to power most people can't imagine. And in return, their biological parents make certain accommodations. Alexander's phone buzzed again. Jack this time. Package secure at second location, but we've got company. Multiple vehicles approaching your building. Ah, Tom smiled. Right on schedule. Did you really think Helena wouldn't have contingency plans, that she'd leave your precious Sophia unprotected? Alexander felt ice in his veins. What did you do? Nothing yet, but in about 3 minutes, a team from Child Protective Services will arrive. They have quite convincing documentation about your unsuitability as a guardian. Reports of emotional manipulation, witness statements about a disturbed man obsessed with a child who reminds him of his lost love. Very concerning stuff. You won't get away with this. I already have. For 7 years. Tom stood, straightening his cuffs. But I'm feeling generous. Sign over control of Morgan Enterprises to the board, to me, and this all goes away. Sophia returns to the program unharmed, and you get to keep your reputation. Hell, I'll even arrange supervised visits. Alexander's hands clenched. Every business instinct screamed at him to find a compromise, to protect his company, to play it safe. But all he could see was Sophia's brave smile, hear Lucas's name whispered in her prayers at night. His phone lit up with another message. Victoria again. Don't trust anything he says about me or Elena, but he's right about one thing. I did keep Sarah's messages from you, because they threatened my daughter too. I'm so sorry, Alexander, but I know how to make it right. Check. Your private server. Password. Elena 1999. As Tom watched with growing unease, Alexander pulled up the files. His eyes widened. Impressive performance, Tom, he said quietly. But you made one mistake. You assumed Victoria was still the same. Desperate woman you blackmailed 20 years ago. That she hadn't spent 2 decades gathering evidence, building a case, waiting for the right moment. Color drained from Tom's face. What are you talking about? Elena Santos didn't disappear into your program. She escaped, and she spent years helping other children do the same. Building a network of safe houses, documenting everything. Victoria wasn't just my secretary. She was your mole. Sirens wailed in the distance, but not police sirens. Alexander smiled. That's not CPS arriving, Tom. That's the federal police, and they're very interested in the evidence Victoria just uploaded. Every transaction, every fake adoption, every shell company. 2 decades of proof. Tom lunged for the door, but Alexander's security team was faster. As they led the struggling lawyer away, Alexander's phone chimed one final time. A message from an unknown number, containing only an address and 2 words that made his heart stop. Found Sarah. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before Alexander, each step echoing with 7 years of lost time. The address had led him here, to a private medical facility on the outskirts of São Paulo. His security team had verified Sarah was inside, but nothing could have prepared him for what he found. Room 714 was bright with afternoon sunlight, and there, looking out, the window was Sarah, thinner than he remembered, her dark hair shorter but undeniably her. She turned at the sound of his footsteps, and 7 years vanished in an instant. I wondered when you'd find me, she said softly. Sarah, his voice cracked. I'm so sorry. If I'd known... I know. She gestured to the chair beside her bed. Victoria told me everything, about Tom, about the messages, about what they were really doing with Global Family Foundations. Alexander sat, fighting the urge to take her hand. Why didn't you tell me about the twins? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I tried. God, Alexander, I tried so many times. But they had proof. Documents showing how Tom was planning to use our baby to take control of your company. I thought I was protecting them by running. She wiped her eyes. And then I got sick, and Helena appeared with her perfect solution. Temporary care for the twins while I recovered. By the time I realized what was really happening, they'd already taken Lucas. We found him, Alexander said gently. Well, we found where they're keeping him. A place in Massachusetts. Hope blazed in Sarah's eyes. Is he... He's safe. Jack's team is moving in tonight, but Sarah, there's something else you need to know about Victoria, about Project Legacy. It's bigger than we thought. He told her everything. About Victoria's past, about Elena Santos, and the underground network of survivors helping children escape the program. About how Project Legacy wasn't just about control, but about creating a generation of perfectly molded future leaders. They chose us, Sarah whispered. Because of our genetics, our backgrounds. They engineered this whole thing, didn't they? The breakup, the separation. They didn't count on Sophia being so brave, Alexander smiled, or so much like her mother. Sarah's laugh turned into a cough, and Alexander noticed for the first time how pale she was, how the hospital machines beeped steadily in the background. How bad is it? He asked quietly. Bad enough that Helena thought I'd never be a problem. Sarah's smile was fierce, but not bad enough to stop me from fighting for my children. Speaking of which, she pressed a button on her phone, and a familiar face appeared in the doorway. Sophia, Alexander breathed. The little girl flew across the room, throwing herself into her mother's arms. Sarah held her close, tears streaming down both their faces. I'm sorry, Mr. Morgan. Jack's voice came from the doorway. She insisted on coming once she knew where we were. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Just like her mother, Alexander smiled. Sophia looked between them, her small face serious. Are you really my dad? The question hung in the air. 7 years of secrets and lies balanced on a child's simple words. Alexander knelt beside the bed, taking both their hands in his. Yes, Pequeña, and I promise you, nothing will ever separate us again. Any of us. Sarah squeezed his hand. Helena won't stop. Even with Tom in custody, even with Victoria's evidence, the people behind Project Legacy will be exposed, Alexander finished. Victoria's network isn't just former victims. They have judges, journalists, politicians, people who've been gathering evidence for years, waiting for the right moment. And thanks to Tom's confession, that moment is now. His phone buzzed. Jack again. Team in position at Massachusetts. Your facility. Ready to move on your signal. Sophia tugged at his sleeve. Are they going to bring Lucas home? Yes, sweetheart, very soon. He looked at Sarah. I know you have every reason not to trust me, but let me fix this. Let me protect our family. Sarah studied him for a long moment. You really have changed. Having your world turned upside down by a brave little girl will do that, he smiled at Sophia. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Ms. Martinez, it's time for your treatment. Go, Alexander said softly. We'll be here when you're done. As Sarah was wheeled away, Sophia climbed into Alexander's lap, her small body fitting perfectly in his arms. Daddy? The word made his heart skip. Is Mummy going to be okay? Alexander held his daughter close, watching Sarah disappear down the corridor. Your mum is the strongest person I know, and now she has something worth fighting for. We all do. His phone lit up with a message from Victoria. Eleanor's team is in position. They found the files, names of every child in the program, every family involved. It's over, Alexander. Project Legacy ends tonight. Sophia yawned, curling closer. Can we go get Lucas tomorrow? Soon, Pequeña, very soon. Alexander pressed a kiss to her hair, marveling at how natural it felt, how right. Outside the hospital window, São Paulo sparkled in the gathering dusk. Somewhere in Massachusetts, a little boy waited, not knowing his family was coming for him. And in offices and safe houses across the globe, Victoria's network prepared to expose 2 decades of secrets. But here, in this quiet hospital room, Alexander Morgan held his daughter and finally understood what true wealth meant. Not empire or power or control, but the simple, profound gift of a second chance to be the father his children deserved. The Massachusetts facility loomed in the pre-dawn darkness, its windows dark and uninviting. Jack Howard adjusted his night vision goggles, scanning the perimeter one last time. Elena Santos crouched beside him, her years of experience evident. in her steady movements. "Security systems are down," she whispered into her comm unit. "Victoria's codes worked perfectly. We have 15 minutes before the backup generators kick in." "Remember," Jack's voice was barely audible, "minimal contact. These are civilian contractors. They don't know what they're really guarding. Team Alpha, take the East Wing. Beta, West Wing, we're looking for a 7-year-old boy, dark hair, brown eyes. According to the files, he's in room 23B. Elena touched her earpiece. "Alexander, we're going in." Back in Sao Paulo, Alexander paced his hospital room office, which he'd set up to coordinate the rescue. Sophia slept peacefully on a cot nearby, refusing to leave despite his gentle attempts to send her home with Mrs. Rodriguez. Sarah's treatment would take hours, and he'd promised to wake Sophia if there was any news about her brother. "Copy that," he replied to Elena. "Remember, Lucas might be scared. He doesn't know we're coming." "Just like I was," Elena's voice softened. "But this time, we're bringing him home." The rescue team moved like shadows through the facility. Years of similar operations had honed their skills to perfection. Elena's network had saved dozens of children from Project Legacy facilities, each rescue adding to their understanding of the organization's protocols. "Second floor clear," Team Alpha reported. "No sign of the target." Alexander's hands clenched. Where was his son? "Wait," Beta Team's leader cut in. "Movement in the East Corridor. Room 23B in sight." Elena's voice crackled through the comm. "I'm closest. Moving in." Alexander held his breath, watching the facility's security feeds that Victoria had hacked. Elena's figure approached the door, her movements careful and precise. The lock clicked open. Elena slipped inside, and for a moment, the only sound was static. "Elena," Alexander whispered. "Report." "Room's empty," she replied, and Alexander's heart sank. "But wait, there's something here. Recent signs of occupation. Stuffed bear, books." "Alexander, these drawings on the wall, they're signed Lucas M. and there's something else, a note." "What does it say?" "Nice try," Elena read. "But did you really think we'd leave him here after you took Sophia? Don't worry, he's safe." "For now, Helena." Alexander slammed his fist against the desk, causing Sophia to stir. "They knew we were coming." "Alexander," Jack's voice was urgent. "We've got company. Multiple vehicles approaching. Professional security, not facility staff. Get out of there now." "No," Eleanor cut in. "The drawings, the bear, they left in a hurry. They can't have gone far. Let me check the local." Gunfire erupted through the comm system. "Status report," Alexander demanded. "Security teams," Jack replied, breathing hard. "They're herding us away from the building. These aren't contractors, Alexander. They're professionals." "Fall back," Alexander ordered. "Elena, do you copy? Elena?" Static filled the channel. Then Elena's voice, breathless but triumphant. "I found something. Transfer papers. They're moving him to a facility in Switzerland. Tonight." More gunfire. Alexander could hear Jack shouting orders for retreat. "Elena, get out of there. That's an order." "Not without the evidence, Alexander. These papers, they don't just show where Lucas is. They show where all the legacy children are being sent. This is everything we need to—" The transmission cut off in a burst of static. "Elena? Elena?" "Alexander," Jack's voice was grim. "They have Elena, professional extraction team. They're pulling out now, taking her with them." Alexander's mind raced. Elena Santos, the woman who'd escaped Project Legacy 20 years ago, who'd built the underground network that saved countless children, who'd risked everything to help him find his son. And now, "Track them," he ordered. "Whatever it takes." "Already on it." "But Alexander, there's something else." "The papers Elena found?" "She managed to transmit them before they got her." "You need to see this." Alexander's secure tablet lit up with the incoming files. As he read, his blood ran cold. The transfer orders weren't just about moving children. They were about consolidating power. Project Legacy was entering its final phase, something called the Ascension Protocol. And Lucas wasn't being sent to Switzerland by accident. He was being sent to Helena's private compound, where, according to the documents, all the most promising legacy children were being gathered. Sophia stirred on her cot, blinking sleepily. "Daddy, did they find Lucas?" Alexander moved to sit beside her, smoothing her hair. "Not yet, Pequeña, but we know where he's going, and this time we'll be ready." His phone buzzed. "Victoria, board meeting in 3 hours. Tom's allies are making their move. If we don't stop them, you'll lose control of the company. And without those resources..." "We can't save Lucas," Alexander finished silently. Sophia sat up, suddenly fully awake. "Something's wrong. I can tell." Alexander met his daughter's eyes, Sarah's eyes, and made a decision. "Sophia, remember how you asked me to be your daddy for one day? Well, now I need to ask you something. Something very brave." She straightened her shoulders. "Like how I was brave with Miss Helena?" "Exactly like that. How would you feel about helping me at a very important meeting? One that might help us bring Lucas home?" Sophia's face lit up with fierce determination. "What do I need to do?" Alexander pulled her close, his heart swelling with pride and fear and love. "Just tell the truth, Pequeña. Tell them exactly what happened to you and..." "Lucas, can you do that?" She nodded solemnly. "Will it help get my brother back?" "Yes," Alexander promised, praying he wasn't lying. "It will." His phone lit up again. Another message from Jack. "Elena's tracking device is active. You're not going to believe where they're taking her." Alexander looked at the coordinates and felt a grim smile spread across his face. Sometimes the universe had a strange sense of humor. They were taking Elena to Switzerland, to the same compound where they were sending Lucas. Now he just had to survive the board meeting, protect his daughter, save Elena, and rescue his son, all while bringing down a decades-old conspiracy that had infiltrated governments worldwide. Just another day at the office. The Morgan Enterprises boardroom hummed with tension. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the 20 board members seated around the massive mahogany table. Alexander sat at its head, Sophia small but straight-backed in a chair beside him. Victoria stood at the ready, with her tablet, while Sarah watched from a wheelchair near the door, her treatment schedule adjusted for this crucial meeting. "This is highly irregular," Bernard Whitmore, Tom's closest ally on the board, was saying. "Bringing a child to a confidential meeting..." "This child," Alexander cut in smoothly, "is the reason we're here. Sophia, would you like to tell the board what happened to you?" Sophia stood, her voice clear and steady despite her obvious nervousness. "My name is Sophia Martinez Morgan. 3 months ago, Miss Helena came to our house. She said she could help. My mom get better if we went with her, but then they took my brother away." The boardroom stirred. Several members exchanged uncomfortable glances. "This is preposterous," Whitmore blustered. "Tom Reed has already explained. Tom Reed is currently in federal custody," Victoria interrupted, tapping her tablet. The wall screen filled with documents, along with evidence of decades of financial fraud, all tied to global family foundations. Evidence that shows how he used company resources to fund Project Legacy. "Project what?" someone asked. "A program designed to identify and control children with specific genetic markers," Alexander explained. "Children whose parents hold positions of power. Children like Sophia and Lucas, my children." The room erupted in whispers. Whitmore's face turned purple. "You expect us to believe this fantasy? That Tom Reed, our trusted colleague of 20 years, was involved in some conspiracy involving children?" "No," Alexander smiled coldly. "I expect you to believe the evidence, Victoria." The screen changed, showing financial records, offshore accounts, shell companies. "Every illegal transaction," Victoria narrated. "Every fake adoption. Every bribe and blackmail payment. All traced back to accounts Tom Reed managed on behalf of Project Legacy." "And how did you obtain these records?" Whitmore demanded. "Through illegal hacking? Industrial espionage?" "Through me," Sarah spoke up from her wheelchair. All heads turned. "I kept records of everything. From the day they threatened my unborn children, I documented it all. Until I got sick, and they used that weakness to take my babies." Sophia ran to her mother, who pulled her close. The sight wasn't lost on the board members, particularly the women, several of whom looked visibly shaken. "Now," Alexander continued, "we come to the real reason for this meeting. Not just to expose Tom's crimes, but to stop what's coming next. Victoria? New documents filled the screen, the transfer orders Elena had discovered. Project Legacy is entering its final phase. They're gathering their most promising children at a compound in Switzerland, including my son, Lucas. Right now, team. Legacy handlers are transporting him there, along with dozens of other children. What do you expect us to do about it? Whitmore asked, but his voice had lost its certainty. I expect you to make a choice, Alexander replied. Right now, there are two motions before this board. The first, proposed by Mr. Whitmore, would remove me as CEO and transfer control to a consortium of board members, all of whom, I should mention, have connections to global family foundations. He paused, letting that sink in. The second motion authorizes the use of company resources, specifically our private security force and global transportation network, for a humanitarian rescue operation. This is absurd, Whitmore sputtered. You're talking about an armed invasion of a facility in another country. I'm talking about saving children, Alexander corrected, including my son, and Elena Santos. The name triggered another round of whispers. Everyone in international business knew Elena Santos, the crusading journalist who'd exposed countless corporate scandals. Elena was taken during an attempt to rescue Lucas, Alexander continued. She's being transported to the same facility, and she has proof that could expose everyone involved in Project Legacy, which is why some people on this board are very eager to stop me from going after her. He stood, commanding the room's attention. So yes, Bernard, I am asking this board to approve a rescue operation, to authorize me to use every resource at our disposal to save these children and expose those who would use them as pawns. And if we refuse? Whitmore challenged. Alexander smiled, the same smile that had terrorized opponents in countless negotiations. Then every document Victoria has showing your personal involvement with global family foundations goes to the federal police, starting with the offshore account that received $10 million the day after you voted to acquire their subsidiary. Color drained from Whitmore's face. Similar expressions of shock or guilt flickered across other board members' faces. You're blackmailing us, someone whispered. No, Sophia spoke up suddenly. He's being a daddy. She looked around the room, her young face impossibly wise. My brother is scared and alone. Wouldn't you do anything to save your children? Silence fell. Sarah reached for Alexander's hand, squeezing it tightly. I move to approve the rescue operation, Janet Chen, the board's longest-serving member, said quietly. Seconded, another voice called. All in favor? Victoria asked formally. Hands rose, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. Even Whitmore, seeing the tide turn, raised his trembling hand. Motion carried, Victoria announced. Unanimously. Alexander's phone buzzed. A message from Jack. Eleanor's tracker still active. Swiss compound located. Team ready on your command. He looked at Sophia, saw the hope blazing in her eyes. At Sarah, whose face showed the same fierce determination he remembered from 7 years ago. At Victoria, whose own lost daughter had set her on this path of redemption. Send the coordinates to the security team, he ordered. We move at dawn. Alexander's private jet cut through the night sky, leaving Sao Paulo far behind. In the luxurious cabin, converted into a mobile command center, his team worked tirelessly to coordinate the upcoming rescue operation. Victoria's network of contacts had provided detailed blueprints of Helena's Swiss compound, and Jack's security team was already in position, establishing surveillance. Sarah sat beside him, looking stronger after her latest treatment. The doctors had protested her traveling, but one look at her face had silenced their objections. No force on earth could keep her from this mission to save their son. The compound's security is state-of-the-art, Victoria reported, pulling up schematics on the cabin screens. 3 layers of perimeter defense, biometric scanners, armed patrols. They're expecting us. Good, Alexander replied. Let them focus on stopping. A frontal assault. That's not how we're getting in. Sophia, who had refused to stay behind with Mrs. Rodriguez, looked up from her tablet where she'd been video chatting with her new friend, Janet Chen's granddaughter. I know a way, she said quietly. All heads turned to her. Sarah reached for her hand. "Sweetheart, what do you mean?" "In the institute, before I ran away, I heard Miss Helena talking about the Swiss house. She said it's special, because that's where they train us, the legacy children." Sophia's voice grew stronger. "There are secret passages everywhere, so they can watch us without us knowing. That's how I escaped from my room the night I found you, Daddy." Alexander exchanged glances with Victoria. "The blueprints don't show any hidden passages." "They wouldn't," Victoria mused. "Eleanor's files mention something similar at other facilities. Observation corridors, hidden rooms. They study the children like lab rats, documenting every interaction." "Sophia," Sarah asked gently, "do you remember anything else about these passages?" The little girl nodded. "Miss Helena said the Swiss house was built first. It's the template for all the others, and—" She hesitated. "There's a special room, the Ascension Chamber. That's where they're taking Lucas and the other special children." "What happens in this chamber?" Alexander asked, though part of him didn't want to know. "I don't know, but the kids who go in, they come out different, perfect like robots." Sophia shuddered. "They wanted to send me there, but then Mom got sick and they changed their plans." Sarah pulled Sophia into a tight hug, her face pale. Alexander felt rage building in his chest. Not the hot, destructive anger of youth, but something colder, more focused. These people had tried to turn his children into puppets, had hurt Sarah, had manipulated thousands of lives. His phone chimed, a message from Jack. "Elena's tracker's still active. They're holding her in the compound's east wing. Security is heaviest there." "Of course it is," Victoria said. "That's where they keep their most sensitive files. Eleanor would have known that. It's why she let herself be captured. She's trying to get to their core database." "How long until the Ascension Protocol begins?" Sarah asked. Victoria checked her tablet. "According to the files Elena transmitted, dawn tomorrow. They're gathering all the prime candidates for some kind of ceremony." "Including Lucas," Alexander growled. "Mr. Morgan," the pilot's voice came through the intercom. "We're approaching Swiss airspace. Local authorities are requesting our landing permits." Alexander nodded to Victoria, who activated a set of carefully forged documents. Another gift from her network, paperwork identifying their jet as belonging to one of Project Legacy's shell companies, scheduled to deliver special cargo to the compound. "Send them through," he ordered, "and contact our ground team. I want everyone in position before we land." Sophia tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, what's going to happen to Miss Elena?" Alexander knelt beside his daughter. "We're going to save her. Pequeña. Her and Lucas and all the other children." "But what about the bad people? They're so powerful." "Power isn't everything, Sophia," Sarah said softly. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is tell the truth." Victoria's tablet chimed. "Speaking of truth, Elena's last transmission just finished decrypting. Alexander, you need to see this." The screen filled with documents, evidence of Project Legacy's true purpose. It wasn't just about controlling powerful families through their children. The Ascension Protocol was something far more ambitious. "They're building an army," Victoria whispered. "Taking gifted children and programming them to become perfect leaders, perfect soldiers, perfect puppets, and tomorrow's ceremony." "Is their first mass activation," Alexander finished. "How many children are we talking about?" 47. All under the age of 10, all showing exceptional abilities, all carefully conditioned over years to respond to specific triggers. Victoria's hands shook slightly. "Once activated, they'll be sent back to their influential families carrying Project Legacy's programming like a virus." Sarah gasped. "They're trying to engineer the next generation of world leaders." "Not trying," Alexander corrected grimly. "Succeeding, unless we stop them." His phone buzzed. Jack again. "Ground team in position, but there's something else. We've got movement at the compound. Looks like they're preparing for some kind of arrival. Multiple security teams mobilizing." "Helena," Alexander guessed. "She'll want to oversee the ceremony personally." "Good," Sarah's voice was steel. "I have some things to say to her." Sophia climbed into Alexander's lap, her small face serious. "I'm scared," she admitted, "but not too scared to help." Alexander hugged her close, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "You've already helped more than you know, Pequeña. You brought us all together. You helped us uncover the truth. And now, Sarah added, taking both their hands, we're going to make sure no one can ever hurt our family again. The jet began its descent into Swiss airspace. Below them, hidden in the Alps, Helena's compound waited. Somewhere in those walls, Lucas was being prepared for tomorrow's ceremony. Eleanor was hunting for evidence. And Project Legacy's architects were about to learn a harsh lesson about the power of truth and the strength of a family fighting to save its own. Alexander squeezed Sophia's hand, met Sarah's determined gaze and nodded to Victoria. Send the signal. Operation Legacy starts now. The Swiss night was crisp and clear as Alexander's team assembled in a hidden valley 2 miles from Helena's compound. Stars sparkled above the snow-capped peaks, their light reflecting off the specialized equipment being distributed among the rescue teams. Remember, Jack briefed the assembled operators, all handpicked from Victoria's network of legacy survivors and trusted allies. Our primary objectives are the children and Elena Santos. Team Alpha will create a diversion at the main gate. Beta Team, you'll infiltrate through the service entrance using the credentials Victoria's people acquired. Morgan, your team will access the hidden passages Sophia identified. Alexander checked his tactical gear one last time. Beside him, Victoria worked with communications equipment that would let them coordinate with all teams simultaneously. Sarah sat nearby looking determined despite her obvious fatigue. I should be going with you, she insisted. You're still recovering, Alexander said gently, and Sophia needs you here. Their daughter sat cross-legged in the mobile command center, helping Victoria's tech team monitor the compound's security feeds. They'd managed to hack into the system using codes Elena had transmitted before her capture. Movement at the main gate, Sophia reported, her young voice professional. 3 black SUVs arriving. It's Miss Helena, I recognize her car. Through the surveillance feeds, they watched Helena Costello sweep into the compound surrounded by security. Even at this distance, her confidence was evident in every movement. She's heading to the East Wing, Victoria noted. Where they're holding Elena. Alexander's earpiece crackled. Sir, one of Jack's scouts reported. We've got eyes on the Ascension Chamber. They're gathering the children now. Lucas is among them. Sarah gripped Alexander's arm. On the screens, they could see their son being led along with other children into a large, circular room. Lucas looked smaller than in the photos, but his face showed the same quiet determination Sophia had displayed. What are they doing to them? Sarah whispered. The feed showed white-coated technicians arranging the children in concentric circles. At the center stood a strange device, something like a combination of a medical scanner and a theatrical lighting rig. The Ascension device, Victoria explained, reading from Eleanor's files. It uses a combination of light patterns, sound frequencies, and electromagnetic pulses to trigger pre-programmed responses in the children's minds. Once activated, they'll be completely loyal to Project Legacy's objectives. They're brainwashing. Them? Sarah's voice shook with rage. No, Alexander said firmly. They're trying to, but they haven't succeeded yet. He turned to Jack. How long until the ceremony begins? 1 hour. Helena's personally overseeing the final preparations. Alexander nodded to his team. Then let's move. Victoria, you have command of the operation. Sophia Pequeña, keep watching those cameras. You're our eyes inside. Sophia straightened in her chair. I won't let you down, Daddy. The infiltration began precisely as planned. Team Alpha's diversion, a convincing accident involving a fuel truck near the main gate, drew security's attention. Team Beta, disguised as maintenance workers, slipped in through the service entrance. Alexander's team accessed the hidden passages through an entrance Sophia had identified, a maintenance tunnel that connected to the compound's original construction. The passages were narrow and dusty, clearly unused by anyone larger than a child in years. Security teams responding to the gate, Sophia's voice came through their earpieces. Miss Helena is heading to the Ascension Chamber. She looks angry. Elena's tracker shows movement, Victoria added. They're moving her too, probably to witness the ceremony. Alexander's team reached a junction in the passages. Through observation slits in the walls, they could see into various rooms, Children's bedrooms, classrooms, laboratories, all empty now as everyone gathered for the ceremony. "Daddy," Sophia's voice was urgent. "There's something wrong with the cameras in Section C. They're showing the same image over and over." "That's where Elena is," Victoria realized. She must have found a way to loop the footage. Through another observation port, Alexander caught a glimpse of the Ascension chamber. The device at its center was powering up, emitting a soft hum. Lucas sat in the inner circle, his small face illuminated by the pulsing lights. 5 minutes to ceremony start, Jack reported. Alexander signaled his team to their positions. Everything hinged on precise timing now. Too early, and Helena would have time to react. Too late. "Wait," Sophia called. "Something's happening in the east wing, the power, and it's fluctuating." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the compound. Emergency lights began flashing. "What's happening?" Sarah demanded. "It's Elena," Victoria laughed. "She's overloading their systems, creating a cascade failure." The Ascension chamber's lights flickered. Through the observation slot, Alexander saw Helena storming toward the control panel, her perfect composure finally cracking. "Now," he ordered. His team burst from the hidden passages at strategic points around the chamber. Simultaneously, Team Beta emerged from service doors, while Team Alpha breached the main entrance. Helena spun, her face contorted with rage. "Stop them! The ceremony must—" The lights went out completely. When they came back on seconds later, Alexander stood in the center of the room, beside the now silent Ascension device. "Hello, Helena," he said quietly. "I believe you have my son." The security teams raised their weapons but hesitated. Through every door and passage, Victoria's people had entered, many of them wearing official law enforcement uniforms from various countries. "This is a private facility," Helena snarled. "You have no authority here." Actually, Elena Santos stepped into the room, supported by 2 of Victoria's agents. "They do." She held up a tablet. "I just transmitted proof of Project Legacy's activities to every major law enforcement agency in the world, including evidence of your little ceremony today." "Impossible. Our systems were designed by children you trained too well," Elena smiled. "Did you really think we wouldn't find a way to turn your own protections against you?" The children in the room stirred, looking around in confusion as the Ascension device's influence faded. "Lucas," Alexander called softly. A small figure broke from the inner circle, running toward him. Alexander caught his son in his arms, holding him close for the first time in 7 years. "Dad?" Lucas whispered. "Is it really you?" "Yes, son, I'm here, and I'm never letting you go again." Helena laughed, a cold, empty sound. "How touching. But you've forgotten something. These children, they belong to us. Legally, officially, completely. Their parents signed them away. You have no—" "Actually," Victoria's voice cut in through the compound speakers, "those documents are now invalid, along with everything else Project Legacy created. Elena didn't just transmit evidence, she transmitted a virus that's currently erasing every digital record of your organization's existence. Bank accounts, shell companies, legal documents, it's all gone." The color drained from Helena's face as her phone chimed with urgent messages. "As for authority," Elena added, "say hello to Interpol's Human Trafficking Division and the FBI's Special Investigations Unit, and about a dozen other agencies who are very interested in Project Legacy's activities." Law enforcement officers began leading away Helena's security teams, many of whom were already surrendering their weapons. "This isn't over," Helena spat as agents approached her. "Project Legacy is bigger than any of you understand. We have people everywhere." "Had," Alexander corrected, still holding Lucas. "Past tense. Victoria's network has been identifying your supporters for years. Right now, similar scenes are playing out in facilities and offices around the world. Project Legacy isn't just over, Helena. It never existed." Through his earpiece, he heard Sophia's excited voice. "Daddy, did you find him? Did you find Lucas?" "Yes, Pequeña," he smiled. "Would you like to say hello to your brother?" Lucas's eyes widened at Sophia's voice. "Sophia, is that really you?" "Lucas!" Both children were crying now. "Mom's here too, we're all here." Alexander looked at Helena as she was led away. You tried to use children as weapons, but you forgot something important. Children aren't machines. They're human beings with hearts and souls and an incredible capacity for love. And love, Helena, is stronger than any programming. The compound bustled with activity as law enforcement processed the scene and doctors examined the rescued children. But in the middle of the chaos, Alexander held his son while Elena and Victoria coordinated with authorities, and somewhere above, Sophia and Sarah waited to make their family complete. Project Legacy had tried to create perfect puppets. Instead, they'd helped forge something far more powerful, a network of survivors and allies dedicated to protecting children from those who would use them as pawns. And in the end, it wasn't sophisticated programming or advanced technology that brought them down. It was the simple, unshakable love of a father for his children and the courage of those who refused to let evil triumph. The Swiss military hospital buzzed with activity as medical teams evaluated the rescued children. In a private waiting area, Lucas sat between his parents, still holding tightly to Alexander's hand, while Sarah stroked his hair. The boy hadn't spoken much since the rescue, but his eyes followed every movement, taking in everything with quiet intensity. "When can we see Sophia?" he asked for the third time, his voice small but determined. "Very soon, sweetheart," Sarah promised. "The doctors just want to make sure you're okay first." Alexander watched his son's face, noting the subtle changes 7 years had wrought. Lucas had Sarah's eyes, just like Sophia, but his reserved demeanor reminded Alexander of himself at that age. The weight of everything they'd missed sat heavy in his chest. "Mr. Morgan?" A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Your daughter's helicopter just landed." Lucas stood immediately, his whole body trembling with anticipation. They heard Sophia's voice before they saw her, carrying down the hospital corridor. "Lucas! Lucas!" The twins collided in the middle of the waiting room, holding each other so tightly it seemed they'd never let go. Sophia was crying, speaking rapid-fire Portuguese mixed with English, while Lucas just buried his face in his sister's shoulder, his small frame shaking with silent sobs. "I knew you'd find me," he whispered. "I knew you wouldn't forget." "Never," Sophia replied fiercely. "We're twins. We're supposed to be together." Sarah moved to embrace both children, and Alexander found himself drawn into their circle, his arms encompassing his entire family for the first time. The moment felt surreal, too precious to be real, too powerful to be a dream. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her usual professional demeanor softened by the scene before her. "I hate to interrupt, but there's something you need to see." She held up her tablet, showing news feeds from around the world. The Project Legacy scandal was breaking across every major network. Headlines screamed about child trafficking rings, corporate corruption, and international conspiracies. Photos of Helena being led away in handcuffs competed with images of rescued children being reunited with their families. "The Swiss authorities are cooperating fully," Victoria reported. "Elena's evidence was comprehensive. Global Family Foundation's entire network is being dismantled, but there's more." She hesitated, glancing at the children. Alexander understood. Some conversations weren't meant for young ears. "Sophia, Lucas, why don't you show your mom the gift Mrs. Rodriguez packed for you? It's in Sophia's backpack." Once the children were distracted, Victoria continued in a lower voice. "We found records of other facilities, smaller operations but using the same basic protocols. Some of the children, they've been in the program for decades, now adults, many in positions of significant influence." "The first generation," Alexander realized. "Helena's proof of concept. Yes, Elena's team is working to identify them, but it's complicated. The programming is subtle. They might not even know they've been compromised." Alexander's mind raced through implications. How many decisions, how many global policies had been influenced by Project Legacy's hidden puppets? "What can we do?" "That's the thing." Victoria managed a small smile. "Elena had a backup plan, the same virus that destroyed Project Legacy's records. It also transmitted a signal, a kind of wake-up call designed to break their conditioning. She's been working on it for years, testing it on herself." Alexander turned sharply. What do you mean? I mean Elena wasn't just investigating Project Legacy. She was their first success story, their perfect subject, who escaped and spent 20 years figuring out how to free everyone else. Victoria's eyes were bright with admiration. She built the rescue network while simultaneously developing a cure. From across the room came the sound of children's laughter. Lucas was showing Sophia a complex hand game he'd learned, their movements perfectly synchronized despite their years apart. "Will they be okay?" Alexander asked quietly. Lucas and the others, did Helena's programming have time to take hold? The ascension ceremony was interrupted before it could be completed, Victoria assured him, and Elena's signal should prevent any latent conditioning from activating. But, she hesitated, but? They'll need time, support, the kind of help only other survivors can provide. She met his eyes. That's actually why I'm here. Elena's organizing a foundation, a real one this time, using recovered Project Legacy assets to fund rehabilitation programs, counseling, education. She'd like you to be involved. Alexander watched his family, Sarah joining the twins' game, all three laughing together. What exactly did Elena have in mind? A complete overhaul of Global Family Foundation's infrastructure, turn their facilities into treatment centers, use their resources to help instead of harm, but for that, we need someone with experience managing international organizations, Alexander finished. Someone with the resources and connections to make it work. Someone who understands what these families have lost, Victoria added softly, and what it takes to heal those wounds. Before Alexander could respond, Lucas appeared at his side. "Dad, Sophia says you have a library full of books at home, real books, not just the learning tablets they gave us." "That's right," Alexander smiled. "Would you like to see it?" Lucas nodded eagerly, then hesitated. Are we really going home? All of us?" Alexander knelt to his son's level, seeing the fear and hope warring in those familiar eyes. "Yes, Lucas, we're all going home. Together. And no one will take us away again?" "Never," Alexander promised. "In fact," he looked up at Victoria, "tell Elena I'm in, but with one condition: the first new treatment center opens in São Paulo, close to home." Victoria smiled. "I think that can be arranged." Lucas hugged his father impulsively, then ran back to his sister and mother. Alexander watched them, feeling possibilities unfold. Project Legacy had tried to create perfect soldiers, perfect leaders, perfect puppets. Instead, they'd created something far more powerful. A network of survivors determined to heal not just themselves, but all those who came after. His phone buzzed with a message from Jack. Helena talking. Names dropping like bombs. "Want me to keep you updated?" Alexander typed back. "Tomorrow, tonight is for family." In the years to come, there would be challenges, therapy sessions and nightmares, trust issues and healing moments. But watching his children teach each other their separate games, seeing Sarah's smile grow stronger by the hour, Alexander knew one thing with absolute certainty. Love was stronger than any programming, and family bonds couldn't be broken. By distance or time, they were together, they were healing, they were home. 2 weeks after the rescue, Alexander's penthouse hummed with life in a way it never had before. Children's laughter echoed through once silent halls, toys scattered across pristine surfaces, and family photos appeared on walls that had previously displayed only abstract art. Sarah had moved in temporarily while they house-hunted for a proper family home. Her treatments were progressing well, her strength returning day by day. The doctors were optimistic about her prognosis, especially now that the stress of separation from her children was lifted. Alexander sat in his home office, reviewing plans for the new treatment center. The old Global Family Foundation's building in São Paulo was being completely renovated, its cold institutional architecture transformed into something warmer, more welcoming. Eleanor's team had designed the space specifically for helping children and families heal from trauma. A soft knock interrupted his work. "Come in," he called, expecting Victoria with more documents to sign. Instead, Lucas stood in the doorway, clutching a notebook. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son." Alexander cleared space on his desk, still marveling at how natural the word son felt now. "What's on your mind?" Lucas approached carefully, his movements still showing. Traces of Project Legacy's rigid training. In the facility, they made us keep journals about our thoughts and feelings. He held up the notebook. "I want to burn mine. Sophia already burned hers, but I wrote other things too. Stories. About you and Mom and Sophia, about us being together again. They said it was childish that I needed to focus on my training, but I kept writing anyway." Lucas looked down. "I don't want to burn those parts." Alexander felt his throat tighten. "May I see?" Lucas handed over the notebook, its pages filled with careful handwriting. Between clinical observations and prescribed self-assessments were little stories, sketches, dreams of family life, a Christmas celebration, a birthday party. Simple moments like helping with homework or reading bedtime stories. "These are beautiful, Lucas," Alexander said softly, "and very brave." "They are?" "Yes. You kept hope alive through your stories. You didn't let them take away your dreams of family." He handed the notebook back. "What if we type up the stories you want to keep, and then you can do whatever you want with the rest of the journal?" Lucas's face lit up. "Could you help me? I'd be honored." They worked together, Alexander typing while Lucas read aloud the parts he wanted to preserve. Many of the stories featured Sophia as a hero, finding creative ways to rescue her brother. Others imagined Sarah healthy and strong, singing lullabies like she used to. In every story, the family ended up together. "Lucas, you up here?" Sophia's voice called from the hallway. "In Dad's office." Sophia bounded in, her recovery already, showing in her more relaxed movements. "Mum's teaching Mrs. Rodriguez how to make brigadeiros properly. Want to help?" Lucas looked at Alexander, who smiled. "Go on, we can finish this later." As the twins ran off together, their footsteps thundering down the hallway, Alexander's phone buzzed. Elena Santos was calling. "The new foundation's paperwork is finalized," she reported without preamble. "We're officially the Phoenix Project now, helping legacy survivors rise from the ashes. The first therapy groups start next week." "How many families are participating?" 23 so far, with more coming forward every day as news of the scandal spreads. Victoria's network has been invaluable in reaching out to survivors. Elena paused. "How are your twins doing?" Alexander watched through his office window as his children helped Sarah and Mrs. Rodriguez in the kitchen, all of them laughing as they got chocolate on everything. "They're resilient. The nightmares are getting less frequent. The therapist says they're making exceptional progress. They have what many others didn't," Elena noted. "A stable home, loving parents, each other. Speaking of which, the contractors finished the security upgrades on that house you were looking at. It's as safe as we can make it." The house in question was a beautiful colonial-style home in São Paulo's best school district, with enough room for the whole family and state-of-the-art. Security features designed by Jack's team. Alexander had made an offer the day after returning from Switzerland. "Perfect. I'll tell Sarah tonight. She's been worried about security." "Understandable, after everything." Elena's voice softened. "You know, when I first escaped Project Legacy, I thought I was alone. That no one would believe what had been done to us, let alone help fight it. Now look at us, hundreds of survivors connecting, supporting each other, turning tragedy into triumph." Through the window, Alexander saw Sophia teaching Lucas how to roll the chocolate balls for brigadeiros, while Sarah supervised and Mrs. Rodriguez recorded the moment on her phone. Such a simple scene, yet one he'd never thought he'd witness. "Elena," he said suddenly, "thank you for never giving up, for showing us how to fight back." "Thank your daughter," Elena replied. "Sophia's courage in running away, in trusting you, that was the catalyst we needed. Sometimes the smallest actions create the biggest changes." After hanging up, Alexander joined his family in the kitchen. The counters were covered in chocolate, the air sweet with the smell of condensed milk and cocoa. Lucas had chocolate on his nose, and Sophia was trying to teach him their mother's secret recipe while Sarah corrected them both. "Daddy!" Sophia called. Come help. Lucas doesn't believe me that you have to stir it exactly 100 times. Actually, Sarah laughed, you both have it wrong. The secret is... Alexander stepped into the chaos, into the love, into the healing. Project Legacy had tried to create perfect soldiers, but they'd failed to understand a fundamental truth. Perfection isn't found in control or programming, but in moments like these, in chocolate-covered counters and children's laughter, in family recipes and shared stories, in the messy, beautiful reality of love. As he helped his children count stirs and roll candies, Alexander silently thanked whatever twist of fate had led Sophia to grab his sleeve that day on the street. Sometimes the greatest changes come not from grand plans or powerful organizations, but from a child's simple plea. Be my daddy for one day. One day had become forever, and their story was just beginning. The new house buzzed with activity as movers carried in the last of the furniture. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, São Paulo's skyline glittered in the late afternoon sun. Alexander watched as Sophia and Lucas explored their new rooms, their excited voices echoing through the spacious halls. I still can't believe this is real, Sarah said softly, joining him at the window. Her latest round of treatment had gone well, bringing color back to her cheeks and strength to her steps. Which part? Alexander smiled. The house or having both our children under one roof? All of it. Us. This second chance. She gestured to the family photos already hanging on the walls, new ones mixed with recovered pictures from their past. Sometimes I wake up afraid it's all been a dream. I know the feeling. Alexander watched as Lucas showed Sophia his new telescope, the twins' heads bent together as they examined it. The therapist says that's normal, that it will take time for all of us to feel secure again. Their family counseling sessions had become a twice-weekly ritual, part of the Phoenix Project's comprehensive support program for legacy survivors. The twins were also attending special classes with other rescued children, learning to process their experiences while rediscovering normal childhood activities. Victoria appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. The security system is fully operational. Jack's team finished the final checks. The house's protection went far beyond standard measures. Every window was bulletproof, every door reinforced. Hidden cameras monitored the perimeter, while advanced AI systems analyzed any potential threats. It was a fortress disguised as a family home. And the school? Sarah asked anxiously. Thoroughly vetted, Victoria assured her. The headmistress is a Phoenix Project ally. Her own nephew was in a legacy facility. The entire staff has been specially trained to work with trauma survivors, and security protocols are in place. The twins would be starting school next week, their first time in a normal educational environment. The thought terrified and excited them in equal measure. Mom, Dad, Sophia called from upstairs. Come see what we found. They followed their daughter's voice to what would become the family library. Lucas stood in the center of the room, holding an old book. Look what was on the shelf, he said, showing them the cover, a collection of children's stories, its pages worn with age. Sarah gasped softly. I remember that book. My mother used to read it to me. Read it to us, Sophia asked, already settling onto one of the plush reading chairs. Lucas joined her, making space so their parents could sit on either side. As Sarah began to read, her voice bringing the familiar stories to life, Alexander felt something shift in his chest. This was what Project Legacy had tried to destroy, these simple, precious moments of family connection. His phone buzzed quietly. A message from Elena. First group therapy session for adult survivors starting tomorrow. 28 participants, some very influential names. You still okay to speak? Alexander typed back a quick confirmation. Part of the Phoenix Project's mission was helping legacy survivors in positions of power recognize and overcome their programming. It wasn't enough to save the children. They had to heal the adults too. And the brave little prince found his way home, Sarah read, her voice warm with emotion, guided by the love of his family, which shone brighter than any star. Just like us, Sophia whispered, squeezing her brother's hand. Lucas nodded, but his face held a shadow of concern. What if the bad people try to separate us again? They won't, Alexander said firmly. Not ever. How can you be sure? Lucas pressed, showing the analytical mind Project Legacy had tried to exploit. Because now we have help, Sarah explained. Elena, Victoria, the Phoenix Project, hundreds of people working to make sure what happened to you never happens to any child again. And because we're stronger together, Sophia added with the wisdom that still sometimes startled them. Miss Elena says that's why they tried to separate us, because they were afraid of how strong love can make people. Victoria cleared her throat from the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you should see. She held up her tablet, showing a news broadcast. Helena Costello was being led into a federal courthouse. Her perfect composure finally cracked. The headline read, Project Legacy Leader agrees to full cooperation in international investigation. She's naming names, Victoria reported. High-level conspirators, hidden facilities, everything. The whole network is unraveling. Good, Sarah said firmly, holding her children closer. Alexander's phone buzzed again. Jack this time. Bank records decoded. Found something interesting about Sarah's original treatment costs. You're going to want to see this. He glanced at his family, absorbed in another story, and stepped into the hallway. What did you find? The bills were inflated. Massively. Helena's people created a financial crisis to force Sarah into their program. The actual treatment costs, a fraction of what they claimed, something your insurance would have covered easily. Alexander felt cold anger rise. They'd manufactured Sarah's desperation, created the very vulnerability they then exploited. There's more, Jack continued. Similar patterns with other families. They identified potential legacy children, then engineered situations to gain control. Financial problems, legal troubles, medical emergencies, all carefully orchestrated. Forward everything to the prosecutors, Alexander ordered. And Jack, thank you for everything. Back in the library, Lucas had taken over reading, his voice growing more confident with each word. Sophia added sound effects, making Sarah laugh. The afternoon sun painted them in warm light, creating a picture of domestic peace that felt both miraculous and completely natural. Victoria appeared one last time. The contractors finished the panic room, want to inspect it. Alexander shook his head. Tomorrow. Right now, this is more important. She smiled, understanding. Of course. Oh, and Alexander, Elena asked me to remind you. The Phoenix Project's board meeting is next week. They're voting on expanding the rehabilitation program internationally. I'll be there, he promised. But right now you're just being Dad, Victoria finished. Go be with your family, the world can wait. As she left, Alexander rejoined his family on the reading chair. Lucas scooted over to make room, not missing a word of the story. Sophia rested, her head on his shoulder, while Sarah's hand found his across the back of the chair. Outside, São Paulo hummed with life. Somewhere in the city, Elena prepared to help more survivors heal. Victoria's network monitored for any remaining legacy threats. The Phoenix Project grew stronger every day. But here, in this room filled with books and love and possibility, the simple act of being together was all that mattered. Project Legacy had tried to create perfect soldiers by breaking family bonds. Instead, they'd discovered what Alexander now knew with unshakable certainty, that true perfection lived in moments like these, in the messy, beautiful, unstoppable power of love. The Phoenix Project's new headquarters occupied the top floors of what had once been Global Family Foundation's main office. Gone were the sterile whites and greys, replaced by warm colors and comfortable spaces designed to help families heal. Today, the building hummed with nervous energy as the first international conference of legacy survivors prepared to begin. Alexander adjusted his tie, reviewing his notes one last time. Through the auditorium's doors, he could hear hundreds of voices, survivors, family members, therapists, and advocates from around the world, gathered to share their stories and strengthen their network. Ready? Elena asked, joining him backstage. She looked different now, stronger, more settled in her own skin, since helping to bring down the organization that had tried to control her. Almost. Just waiting for... Dad. Sophia's voice carried across the room as she and Lucas burst through the side door, Sarah following more sedately behind them. The twins wore matching outfits they'd picked themselves, a small act of autonomy that still felt significant. "We made these for you," Lucas said, holding out a small box. Inside were dozens of paper cranes, folded from colorful paper. "Mrs. Rodriguez taught us they're for good luck. The blue ones are from me," Sophia added proudly. "The green ones are from Lucas." Alexander felt his throat tighten. 2 months ago, his children had barely been able to play without checking for permission. Now they were creating art, making choices, being kids. "They're perfect," he managed, carefully placing one of each color in his jacket pocket. "Thank you." Sarah squeezed his hand. "You're going to do great. Just speak from the heart." Victoria appeared with her tablet. 2 minutes. The live stream is ready, and we have confirmed viewers in 43 countries. The Phoenix Project's message was spreading globally, reaching others who'd been affected by Project Legacy's decades of manipulation. Every day brought new survivors forward, new allies joining their cause. "How many in the audience?" Alexander asked. 417, Victoria reported, including representatives from 12 different governments, 30 major corporations, and 15 international child welfare organizations. She smiled. Plus one very proud family. The twins hugged him once more before following Sarah to their seats. Alexander watched them go, marveling at how far they'd come. Lucas walked taller now, his movements losing their military precision. Sophia's laughter came more easily, her nightmares growing less frequent. "It's time," Eleanor said softly. Alexander nodded, following her onto the stage. The auditorium fell silent as he approached the podium. In the front row, his family smiled encouragement. Behind them sat rows of survivors and their loved ones, each face holding its own story of loss and recovery. 6 months ago, he began, my daughter Sophia asked me to be her father for one day. That day changed everything, not just for our family, but for hundreds of others affected by Project Legacy's attempts to control the future through our children. He told their story, weaving it together with others they'd discovered. The parent who'd been blackmailed with falsified medical bills, the CEO whose child was used as leverage for corporate decisions, the politician whose voting record had been influenced by threats to their family. But today isn't about the past, he continued. It's about the future we're building together. Through the Phoenix Project, we're turning instruments of control into tools for healing. Former legacy facilities are becoming treatment centers. Programming techniques are being reversed to help survivors recover. The very network they built to manipulate us is now being used to set us free. In the audience, heads nodded. Some wiped away tears while others sat straighter, stronger in the knowledge they weren't alone. My children taught me something profound, Alexander said, touching the paper cranes in his pocket. They showed me that love isn't a weakness to be exploited. It's the strongest force we have. Project Legacy tried to break family bonds because they feared what we could do together. They were right to be afraid. He gestured to the assembled crowd. Look around. Every person here represents a family that refused to be broken. Every story shared today adds to our collective strength. We're not just survivors anymore. We're revolutionaries, transforming a system of control into a network of support. The rest of the conference unfolded like a tapestry of hope. Survivors shared their experiences in group sessions. Therapists presented new treatment approaches. Government officials pledged support for protective legislation. Through it all, Alexander watched his children absorbing everything with bright eyes and determined faces. During a break, Lucas tugged at his sleeve. Dad, can I say something? To everyone? Alexander looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragement. Of course, son. Lucas walked to the podium, his small frame barely visible behind it. Sophia immediately joined him, taking his hand. The room fell silent again. I used to think I had to be perfect, Lucas said, his voice clear and strong. They told us that's why we were chosen, because we could be shaped into whatever they wanted. But my sister taught me something better. She taught me that being real is more important than being perfect. Sophia squeezed his hand. And our parents taught us that love is stronger than fear. That's why Project Legacy couldn't win, because they only knew how to control, not how to love. The audience burst into applause. Alexander saw Eleanor wiping away tears, while Victoria beamed proudly. Sarah reached for his hand, her eyes shining. Later that evening, as the family walked through their garden at home, Lucas pointed out constellations through his telescope, while Sophia practiced her piano pieces. Sarah and Alexander sat on the patio, watching their children simply be children. "We did it," Sarah said softly. "We really did it." "No," Alexander corrected, pulling her close. "We're doing it. Present tense. Every day." His phone buzzed with a message from Elena. "First International Phoenix Center opens in Geneva next month. Board wants you to cut the ribbon. Bring the whole family." Alexander looked at his children, at Sarah, at the life they were building from the ashes of Project Legacy's ambitions. "What do you think about a family trip to Switzerland? A happy one this time?" Sophia spun away from the piano. "Can we see the mountains?" "And the lakes," Lucas added excitedly. "And everything else," Sarah promised. "Together." As night fell over São Paulo, stars emerged one by one. In the garden of a house built for healing, a family that refused to be broken sat together, planning adventures, sharing stories, creating the kind of memories Project Legacy had tried to prevent. They were more than survivors now. They were pioneers, showing others the way forward. And in their journey from darkness to light, they discovered the truth that would ultimately heal them all, that perfection isn't found in control or programming, but in the simple, profound miracle of family love. The Geneva lakefront shimmered in the autumn sunshine as Alexander watched his children feed the swans. 1 month had passed since the Phoenix Project's international conference, and the family had arrived early for the new center's opening ceremony. Lucas and Sophia's laughter carried across the water, a sound that still felt miraculous every time he heard it. "They're doing so well," Sarah said, joining him on the bench. Her latest medical reports showed remarkable improvement, as if her body had been waiting for her family to be whole again before truly healing. "Better than the therapists expected," Alexander agreed. "Dr. Martinez says their bond is helping them process the trauma." A familiar figure approached along the lakeside path, Elena Santos carrying a thick folder. "Sorry to interrupt family time, but you need to see this." Alexander recognized the serious look in her eyes. "Kids, why don't you show your mom that ice cream shop we passed earlier?" Once they were alone, Elena opened the folder. Helena's final deposition just came in. She revealed something unexpected about the Ascension Protocol. The documents showed complex neurological data, brain scans, and psychological profiles. They weren't just programming the children, Elena explained. They were trying to create a kind of collective consciousness. The Ascension Chamber was designed to link multiple minds together, creating a network of perfectly coordinated individuals. Alexander felt cold despite the warm sun. Like a human hive mind? More like a neural network, with Helena's chosen leaders acting as control nodes. If they'd succeeded... Elena's hands trembled slightly. The implications are staggering. They could have controlled not just individual actions, but entire patterns of thought across generations. "But they failed," Alexander reminded her. "The protocol never activated." "No, but..." Elena hesitated. "Some of the preliminary conditioning may have taken hold. We're seeing patterns in the adult survivors, shared dreams, synchronized responses to certain stimuli. Nothing dangerous, but we need to understand it to help them heal," Alexander finished. "What do you need from me?" "The Phoenix Project's research division wants to study the twins, ethically, safely, with full parental involvement," she added quickly. "Their interrupted conditioning might hold the key to helping others break free completely." Alexander watched his children across the lake, their heads bent together as they shared an ice cream cone. Their twin bond had always been strong, but since the rescue it had deepened in ways that sometimes seemed almost supernatural. They finished each other's sentences, sensed each other's moods, moved in unconscious synchronization. "I'll discuss it with Sarah," he said finally, "but only if they want to participate. No more decisions about their lives without their input." Elena nodded, understanding. Of course, and Alexander. There's something else. The Swiss authorities found another facility, hidden in the mountains, not for children, for records, decades of research data on Project Legacy's true origins. She handed him another document. As he read, his breath caught. This can't be right. We've verified it independently. Project Legacy didn't start with Helena, or even with the organization we exposed. It began 40 years ago, with a group of child psychologists studying twin bonds and genetic potential. One of those psychologists was Helena's mother, and one of their first test subjects was my father, Alexander whispered, pieces clicking into place. His father's obsession with perfection, his rigid educational methods, his emphasis on control. It all suddenly made horrible sense. He didn't know, Eleanor said gently. None of the original subjects did. They were studied through normal channels and schools, youth programs, summer camps. But the data collected helped shape Project Legacy's methods. In a way, you and your children were always their ultimate goal, the culmination of generations of research. Alexander's phone buzzed, a message from Victoria. Security alert at the new center. Someone tried to access the restricted archives. Traced it to a former Legacy programmer. Under control now, but they're still out there, he said grimly. The true believers who think what they were doing was right. They'll always be out there, Eleanor agreed. That's why the Phoenix Project isn't just about healing. It's about vigilance, protection, making sure this never happens again. Across the lake, Sophia was teaching Lucas a new clapping game, while Sarah watched, smiling. The sight grounded Alexander, reminding him what they were really fighting for. We'll do the studies, he decided, but we do them our way. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. Everything in the open, everything focused on healing. Agreed. And Alexander, there's one more thing you should know. Elena's face softened. The research we recovered about twin bonds and genetic potential, it was wrong. Their fundamental hypothesis was flawed. They thought they could engineer perfect synchronization, perfect control. But what they didn't understand was love. Alexander finished, watching his family by the lake. The one variable they could never control. Exactly. The very thing they tried to suppress turned out to be the key to breaking their programming. Every successful escape, every recovery story, they all have one thing in common: love, family, real human connection. The Swiss Alps rose behind them, their peaks catching the afternoon sun. Somewhere in those mountains, a new Phoenix Center prepared to open its doors, turning a place of darkness into a beacon of hope. And here, by a peaceful lake, a family that had survived Project Legacy's ultimate experiment was proving its creators wrong with every laugh, every hug, every moment of genuine joy. Alexander's phone chimed again. Sophia had taken a selfie of herself and Lucas pulling funny faces, with Sarah laughing in the background. The simple, spontaneous moment captured everything Project Legacy had failed to understand about human nature. They tried to create perfect soldiers, he told Elena, but instead they gave us perfect proof of humanity's resilience, our capacity to heal, to love, to overcome, to rise from the ashes, Elena smiled, like phoenixes. Together they watched, the family by the lake, living proof that some bonds could never be broken, some lights could never be dimmed, and some kinds of perfection could only be found in life's beautiful imperfections. The new Phoenix Center gleamed in the crisp mountain air, its modern architecture softened by gardens and play areas designed for healing. On opening day, families from across Europe gathered in the main atrium, their faces showing a mix of hope and hesitation. Alexander stood at the podium, his family seated in the front row. Sophia and Lucas wore their Phoenix Project pins proudly, small silver wings that had become a symbol of survival and renewal. Sarah, looking stronger every day, held their hands. When we first uncovered Project Legacy's true scope, Alexander began, we thought our task was simply to shut it down, to rescue the children, expose the conspiracy, and ensure it could never happen again. But as we've learned, ending the program was just the beginning. The real work is healing, not just individuals, but generations of harm. He gestured to the transformed facility around them. This center represents our commitment to that healing. Here, families will find not just therapy and support, but understanding. A community of survivors who know their struggles, who share their journey. Victoria stepped forward with a tablet, displaying images of similar centers being established worldwide. The Phoenix Network now spans 5 continents, she reported. Every day, more survivors come forward, more families find help, more healing becomes possible. In the audience, Alexander saw faces he recognized from the files. Business leaders, politicians, professionals, all carrying the hidden weight of Project Legacy's manipulation. But here, in this space, they could finally acknowledge their pain and seek healing. Lucas tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can I tell them about our discovery?" Alexander smiled encouragement, helping his son to the podium. Sophia immediately joined her brother, their synchronized movements drawing knowing looks from other legacy families. "We used to think we were weird," Lucas began, "because we could feel what each other was feeling, know what each other was thinking." Project Legacy tried to use that connection, Sophia continued. "They said it made us special, made us perfect for their program. But they were wrong," the twins said together, then grinned at the unplanned synchronization. "Our connection isn't about control or programming," Lucas explained. "It's about love, and love can't be programmed." "That's what the research showed," Sophia added. "When they studied us at the Phoenix Project, our bond isn't something they created, it's natural, real, ours." The audience stirred, parents hugging their children closer. Alexander saw tears. On many faces, recognition dawning as families began to understand their own experiences in a new light. Elena stepped forward. "The twins are right. Our research has shown that Project Legacy's attempts to engineer perfect synchronization actually worked against natural human connections. The more they tried to control these bonds, the more resistance they created." She brought up new data. On the screens, what they saw as flaws, emotional attachment, individual expression, the desire for genuine connection, these are actually our greatest strengths. Our humanity isn't something to be engineered away. It's what saves us. Sarah joined her children at the podium. "When I was sick, Project Legacy tried to use my weakness to control my family. They thought desperate people would accept any solution, follow any command, but they underestimated the power of a mother's love, a father's determination, a family's bond." The Swiss morning light streamed through the center's windows, illuminating faces that had spent too long in shadow. Alexander watched as families began sharing stories, children playing together without fear, parents finally able to speak their truth. Victoria appeared at his side. "The secure archives are fully operational. Every piece of Project Legacy research, every scrap of evidence, every survivor's story, all preserved to ensure this history is never forgotten or repeated. And all used to help others heal," Alexander added, watching a group of children teach each other the Phoenix Project's signature clapping game, a symbol of reclaimed joy. His phone buzzed with a message from Jack. "Perimeter secure, but more importantly, you should see this." The attached photo showed the center's garden where families had spontaneously gathered in small groups. Children played while parents talked, therapists circulated offering support, and the mountains stood guard in the background. It was exactly the scene Project Legacy had tried to prevent: genuine human connection, messy and beautiful and real. "Dad!" Sophia called. "Come see what we made!" In the art therapy room, the twins had created a mural with other Legacy children. What started as individual drawings had merged into a collective expression of hope. Phoenixes rising, chains breaking, families reuniting. But unlike Project Legacy's forced synchronization, this collaboration had grown naturally from shared understanding and mutual support. "It's beautiful," Sarah said, wrapping an arm around each twin. "Like us," Lucas replied. "Not perfect, but real. And stronger together," Sophia added. Alexander looked at his family, at the healing happening around them, at the future they were building from Project Legacy's ashes. In trying to create perfect soldiers, the program had instead revealed the perfect truth, that humanity's greatest strength lies not in control, but in connection. Not in programming, but in love. His phone chimed again, Elena sharing the latest research results. But for once, the business could wait. Right now, in this moment, watching his children add their handprints to the mural while Sarah laughed. At their paint-covered faces, Alexander Morgan understood what true perfection looked like. It looked like this, like family and healing and hope, like rising from the ashes together. 3 months after the Geneva Center's opening, Alexander sat in his Sao Paulo office, reviewing the latest Phoenix Project reports. The network had grown beyond their wildest expectations, with centers now operating in 15 countries. But success brought its own challenges. Another attempt to breach our security, Victoria reported, entering with her tablet. This time in the Tokyo facility. They're getting more sophisticated. Project Legacy loyalists? Not exactly. She brought up surveillance footage. Former subjects, adults who still believe in the program's goals. They think we're destroying perfection by helping children break their conditioning. Alexander rubbed his temples. They'd anticipated resistance from Helena's organization, but fighting against those who'd been so deeply programmed they couldn't recognize their own imprisonment was harder. His phone lit up with a message from Sarah. "Come home early today. The twins want to show you something." The something turned out to be a breakthrough in their therapy work. He found his family in their home's new meditation garden, where Lucas and Sophia sat cross-legged on matching cushions, eyes closed in peaceful concentration. "Watch," Sarah whispered, taking his hand. The twins had been working with Dr. Martinez on channeling their connection in healthy ways. As Alexander watched, they demonstrated their progress. Without speaking, they performed a complex series of movements, part dance, part martial arts, part pure expression. They developed it themselves, Sarah explained softly. The therapist says it's helping them process their experiences while strengthening their natural bond. Natural being the key word, Dr. Martinez added, emerging from the garden's shadows. What Project Legacy tried to force, these children are achieving organically. Their connection isn't about control anymore. It's about mutual support and understanding. The twins finished their demonstration with matching smiles, their faces flushed with healthy exertion rather than programmed precision. "That was beautiful," Alexander said, hugging them both. "We're teaching it to other Legacy kids," Sophia announced proudly, "through the Phoenix Network's virtual sessions." Lucas nodded. "It helps them feel less alone, less broken." The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Alexander remembered Helena's files, her clinical descriptions of breaking down natural resistance to achieve perfect synchronization. His phone buzzed, Elena calling from Geneva. "Alexander, we've made a breakthrough with the original research. You're going to want to see this." In his home office, Elena's face filled the secure video feed. "We've been analyzing the earliest Project Legacy documents, the studies your father was unknowingly part of. There's something fascinating in the data they missed." She shared her screen, showing complex psychological profiles. They were so focused on controlling and redirecting natural human connections that they completely overlooked their significance. The strongest resistors to their programming weren't the most individualistic subjects, they were the ones with the deepest family bonds. Like the twins, Alexander realized. Exactly. What they saw as an obstacle to overcome was actually humanity's built-in defense mechanism against manipulation. Real love, genuine connection, it's like a psychological immune system. The garden door opened as Sarah led the twins in. "Show Dad the other thing you learned," she encouraged. Sophia and Lucas stood apart, closing their eyes. Slowly, they each raised one hand, palms facing each other. The air seemed to hum with possibility. "They discovered this by accident during therapy," Dr. Martinez explained. "Watch what happens when they don't try to force the connection." The twins' breathing synchronized naturally. A peace settled over their features that had nothing to do with programming or control. When they opened their eyes, both were smiling. "We can feel each other," Lucas said simply. "Not like before, when they made us. This is warmer. Real," Sophia added. "And we can share it with others now. Help them find their own connections." Alexander's phone chimed with another message, Victoria updating him on the Tokyo situation. But what caught his attention was the attached photo, legacy children in the Japanese center, practicing the twins' movement therapy with their own siblings and friends. "It's spreading," Sarah said, reading over his shoulder. "Not like a virus this time, like hope." "That's what Project Legacy never understood," Dr. Martinez observed. "You can't force human connection. You can only create the conditions for it to grow naturally." The twins had returned to their practice, moving through their self-created forms with fluid grace. In their faces, Alexander saw not the rigid perfection Project Legacy had tried to install, but something far more powerful, the authentic expression of their true selves. His phone buzzed again. Janet Chen this time. "Board meeting tomorrow. The Phoenix Network's expansion plans need review. But first, watch this." The attached video showed scenes from Phoenix centers worldwide, children learning to play again, families rebuilding trust, adults discovering their own authentic voices after years of programming, and everywhere, evidence of the twins' influence, their movement therapy adapted into different cultural forms, their clapping games evolved into new variations, their story inspiring others to share their own. "They're healing the world," Sarah said softly, watching the video over his shoulder. "No," Alexander corrected, pulling her close. "We all are. Together." Through the window, they watched their children move in perfect harmony, not because anyone forced them to, but because they chose it. Because love, when allowed to grow naturally, created the very synchronization Project Legacy had tried and failed to engineer. It was a different kind of perfection, a human one. The São Paulo Phoenix Center buzzed with excited energy as families gathered for its first anniversary celebration. What had started as a rehabilitation facility had evolved into a vibrant community hub where survivors helped newcomers navigate their healing journeys. Alexander watched from the observation deck as Lucas and Sophia led a group of children through their movement therapy routine. The twins had become natural leaders in the youth program, their genuine empathy drawing out even the most withdrawn legacy children. "Remember," Sophia was saying, "it's not about being perfect, it's about being real. Finding your own rhythm," Lucas added, demonstrating a fluid motion that several children immediately mimicked. Sarah joined Alexander at the window, her medical bracelet now replaced by a Phoenix Project Coordinator's badge. Her recovery had inspired her to train as a family counselor, using her experience to help other parents rebuild trust with their children. "Sometimes I watch them and can hardly believe how far they've come," she said softly. "How far we've all come," Alexander corrected, taking her hand. His phone buzzed with updates from Phoenix centers worldwide. Victoria had developed a secure, global communication network, allowing survivors to connect and support each other across continents. The screen filled with images, children playing in Tokyo, families healing in Geneva, new centers opening in Sydney and Cape Town. Elena appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "The latest research results are in. The natural bonding techniques the twins developed, they're showing remarkable success rates in helping other legacy children break their conditioning." She brought up brain scans showing neural activity patterns. What Project Legacy tried to force through the Ascension Chamber, these children are achieving naturally through play and genuine connection. It's like watching humanity's natural resilience in action. Below them, the therapy session had evolved into something like a dance party. Lucas was teaching younger children a new clapping game, while Sophia encouraged parents to join in. The room filled with laughter, a sound that would have been unthinkable in the old legacy facilities. "Mr. Morgan," a small voice drew their attention. A new arrival stood in the doorway, a girl about the twins' age, her movements still, showing traces of legacy programming. "I'm Emma. I heard your children could help me." Before Alexander could respond, Sophia appeared as if by magic, taking Emma's hand. "Of course we can help. That's what Phoenix family does." Lucas joined, them his smile gentle and understanding. "Want to learn our special dance? It helps when the memories get too loud." Emma's rigid posture softened slightly. "They told us dancing was inefficient, a waste of energy." They told us a lot of things, Sophia said wisely, but they were wrong. As the twins led Emma to join the group, Alexander's phone chimed with a message from Jack. Security update. Helena's last supporters identified and contained. The legacy threat is officially neutralized. But Alexander knew better. The real threat had never been Helena or her organization. It had been the idea that human connection could be engineered, that love could be programmed, that perfection meant control. "Alexander," Victoria called from the monitoring station, "you should see this." The screens showed a pattern emerging across the Phoenix network. Spontaneous gatherings like this one, where formal therapy gave way to natural healing through play and connection. In every center, legacy children were teaching each other games, sharing stories, building genuine bonds that no programming could match. "It's like watching the opposite of the Ascension Protocol," Elena observed. "Instead of forced synchronization, we're seeing natural harmony emerge. The very thing they tried to create through control is happening on its own through freedom." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Look at Emma." The new girl had begun to move with the group, her programmed precision gradually melting into more natural rhythms. Sophia and Lucas flanked her protectively, offering encouragement without pressure. Alexander's phone lit up again, this time with a video message from Janet Chen. Her granddaughter, another legacy survivor, had started a support group for teens. The video showed young people sharing their experiences, helping each other recognize and overcome their conditioning. "The Phoenix Network isn't just about healing anymore," Victoria noted. "It's about prevention, making sure no one can ever manipulate children like this again." As if to emphasize her point, a new alert came in. The United Nations had just passed the Legacy Prevention Act, implementing global protections against psychological manipulation of minors. The legislation had been sparked by testimony from Phoenix Project survivors. "Dad, Mom," Sophia called from below, "come dance with us." Sarah laughed. "Should we?" "Absolutely," Alexander smiled, already heading for the stairs. They joined the growing circle of families, where Emma was attempting her first spontaneous dance moves, while Lucas and Sophia cheered her on. Other parents and children joined in, creating a joyful chaos that would have horrified Project Legacy's architects. But in that chaos was a perfect beauty, the beauty of genuine human connection, of natural bonds forming and strengthening, of love growing wild and free. Alexander's phone buzzed one last time, a message from Elena. "Look around. This is what real legacy looks like." And she was right. In this room full of laughter and movement, in centers around the world where survivors helped each other heal, in the simple sight of his children teaching others to reclaim their joy, this was the legacy that mattered. Not project legacies. Twisted vision of engineered perfection, but the natural perfection of human hearts, learning to trust again, to love again, to dance again. Emma's face broke into her first real smile as she mastered a simple step. Sophia hugged her spontaneously, while Lucas started a new game. Parents watched with tears and laughter, healing alongside their children. And in the middle of it all, Alexander held Sarah close, watching their twins help another child find her way home to herself. This was their true legacy. Not perfect soldiers, but perfect examples of love's power to heal, to transform, to rise from any ashes stronger than before. The international press conference at the United Nations headquarters hummed with anticipation. 1 year after Project Legacy's exposure, the world was finally ready to hear the full story from those who had lived it. Alexander sat in the front row beside Sarah, watching their twins prepare to address the global audience. Sophia and Lucas, now more confident in their own skin, stood together at the podium. Their matching Phoenix Project pins caught the light as cameras flashed. The world's media had gathered to witness this unprecedented moment, children speaking truth to power. "A year ago," Sophia began, her voice clear and strong, "we were trapped in a system that tried to make us perfect by taking away our humanity. They said emotions made us weak," Lucas continued. "That family bonds were obstacles to be overcome. That true strength meant complete control." The twins looked at each other, sharing a silent moment of understanding that needed no programming to achieve. They were wrong. they said together, then smiled at the natural synchronization. Victoria, monitoring the global broadcast from her station, sent Alexander a quick message. Live viewers now exceeding 2 billion. Every major network carrying. This, Elena stepped up to join the twins, adding her professional perspective to their personal testimony. Project Legacy's fundamental error was believing that human connection could be engineered, that children could be programmed like computers to achieve perfect synchronization. She brought up displays showing the latest research from the Phoenix Network. What we've discovered through our rehabilitation programs is exactly the opposite. The strongest, most stable connections form naturally through love, trust, and genuine understanding. Sarah squeezed Alexander's hand as their children demonstrated the movement therapy they'd developed, now officially recognized as a breakthrough treatment for trauma recovery. This isn't about control, Sophia explained as they moved. It's about finding your own way to connect, your own way to heal, and helping others find theirs, Lucas added. The audience, composed of world leaders, child welfare experts, and survivors' families, watched in rapt attention as the twins shared their journey from programming to authentic self-expression. Alexander's phone buzzed with updates from Phoenix, centers worldwide. In every facility, survivors were gathering to watch the broadcast, many sharing their own stories for the first time. The truth was spreading like ripples in a pond, each revelation encouraging more voices to speak out. Emma, the once rigid newcomer who'd found healing through the twins' guidance, now stood with other legacy children in the São Paulo Center, leading her own movement therapy sessions. Her transformation had become a symbol of hope for new arrivals still struggling to break free from their conditioning. The real power of the Phoenix Network, Lucas was saying, isn't just in helping survivors heal. It's in preventing this from ever happening again, Sophia nodded. Every time we share our stories, every time we help another child find their real self, we make it harder for anyone to use children as tools or weapons. Dr. Martinez, who had flown in from São Paulo to support her young patients, wiped away tears as she watched her most remarkable success stories demonstrate the power of authentic healing on the world stage. The twins moved through their fluid routine, their natural grace a stark contrast to the rigid precision Project Legacy had tried to instill. Other legacy children in the audience began to move with them, a spontaneous wave of shared healing. That brought many observers to tears. Alexander's phone lit up with another message, Janet Chen sharing footage from the Tokyo Center, where survivors were performing their own version of the twins' therapy. The movement had evolved, incorporating elements of traditional Japanese dance while maintaining its core purpose of authentic expression. This is what real connection looks like, Elena told the assembled leaders. Not forced, not programmed, but freely chosen and naturally developed. As if to prove her point, Sophia and Lucas invited other legacy children to join them on stage. What followed was a beautiful chaos of movement and joy, each child adding their own style to the basic forms the twins had created. Sarah leaned close to Alexander. "Look at their faces," she whispered. "Really look." He did. In each child's expression, he saw what Project Legacy had tried so hard to eliminate: genuine emotion, individual personality, the light of authentic self shining through. Even those still struggling with their conditioning showed hints of their true selves emerging. His phone chimed with updates from Victoria, media reactions pouring in, support flooding social networks, donations to the Phoenix Project skyrocketing. But more importantly, messages from other survivors finally ready to come forward, to seek help, to reclaim their humanity. "This is why we did it," Sarah said softly. "Not just for our children, but for all of them." On stage, Sophia and Lucas concluded their presentation with a simple truth that cut through all the complexity of Project Legacy's schemes. "They tried to make us perfect," Sophia said, "but we already were," Lucas finished, "just by being ourselves." The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for the twins, but for every survivor who had found the courage to reject false perfection in favor of genuine humanity. For every family that had chosen love over control, connection over programming, truth over artifice. As their children accepted the world's recognition with grace and authenticity, Alexander and Sarah held each other close, knowing that their family's journey had helped light the way for countless others to find their way home to themselves. The Phoenix Network had become more than a healing organization. It was a movement, a revolution of the heart, proving that the strongest power in the world wasn't control or programming, but the simple, unshakable truth of authentic human connection. In the quiet of their São Paulo garden 2 weeks after the UN presentation, the Morgan family gathered for their evening ritual. The twins sat cross-legged on their favorite meditation cushions, while Sarah prepared herbal tea and Alexander finished a call with Elena about the latest Phoenix Network developments. Another center opening in Mumbai next month, he reported, joining his family. And the therapy programs are showing unprecedented success rates. Because they're based on truth, Sophia said wisely, accepting her cup of tea. Not control. Lucas nodded, his movements relaxed and natural where once they had been programmed and precise. Emma told me something interesting today. She said she used to dream in black and white, but now her dreams have color. Sarah smiled, remembering her own healing journey. That's exactly how it feels, like the world slowly fills with color again. The evening air was sweet with jasmine, and somewhere in the garden a bird sang its evening song. These peaceful moments had become precious to them all, time to simply be together. No pressure, no performance, no programming. Alexander's phone buzzed one last time. A message from Victoria. Final legacy facility converted. Global network complete. But you need to see this first. The attached video showed scenes from Phoenix centers around the world. In Tokyo, survivors performed a fusion of the twins' movement therapy with traditional Japanese dance. In Mumbai, children taught their parents games that helped process trauma. In Geneva, former legacy subjects led support groups for new arrivals. But what caught Alexander's attention was the faces, every single one bright with authentic emotion, alive with genuine connection. Project Legacy's attempt to create perfect human machines had failed completely, replaced by something far more powerful. Perfect human hearts learning to beat in their own rhythm. "Dad?" Sophia's voice drew him back to the present. "Can we show you something new we learned?" The twins stood, moving to the center of the garden. What followed wasn't their usual therapy routine, but something entirely new. They danced, but each in their own style. Sophia fluid and expressive, Lucas precise but natural. Their movements complemented each other without mimicking, created harmony without sacrificing individuality. "Beautiful," Sarah whispered, wiping away happy tears. "That's what we're teaching the new kids now," Lucas explained. "How to be together without losing yourself. How to be strong without being hard," Sophia added, "like a tree that bends in the wind but doesn't break." Alexander's phone lit up again, this time with a video call from Emma. The once rigid girl now glowed with healthy enthusiasm. "Mr. Morgan, Sophia, Lucas, guess what? I led my first solo therapy session today and—" She paused dramatically. "I laughed out loud in public and didn't feel guilty." The twins cheered, celebrating their friend's milestone. These small victories, a spontaneous laugh, a natural movement, a colorful dream, were the true measure of healing. Sarah joined the twins in the garden, adding her own movements to their dance. Alexander watched his family move together, each in their own way but connected by something deeper than any program could create. Love, trust, understanding. His final message of the day came from Elena. Research complete. Original project. Legacy hypothesis definitively disproven. True human potential isn't achieved through control. It's realized through freedom. Your family proved it. The sun set over São Paulo, painting the sky in colors no program could appreciate, no algorithm could quantify. In the garden, his family continued their dance, their joy a living testament to humanity's resilience. They had survived Project Legacy's attempt to make them perfect machines. Instead, they had become perfectly, beautifully human. "Dad," Sophia called, "come dance with us." and Alexander Morgan, who had once measured success in profit margins and market shares, joined his family in their celebration of authentic joy. Around the world, other families were finding their own dances, their own ways to heal, their own paths to genuine connection. The Phoenix Network would continue to grow, to help, to heal. But its greatest achievement wasn't in its global reach or therapeutic breakthroughs. It was in moments like this, a family dancing in their garden, laughing together, being utterly, perfectly themselves. Project Legacy had tried to engineer perfection through control, but true perfection, they had discovered, wasn't found in programming or protocols. It lived in the messy, beautiful, authentic reality of human hearts learning to trust, to love, to dance to their own rhythm. And in that truth lay the most powerful legacy of all. 18 months after Project Legacy's fall, the Morgan family's new home had become a haven of healing, not just for them, but for others seeking guidance. The sprawling garden, once a simple meditation space, now hosted weekly gatherings where legacy survivors shared stories and supported each other's recovery. Today, a special celebration was underway. Emma, their first success story beyond the family, was marking 1 year since she'd first stepped into the São Paulo Phoenix Center. The garden bloomed with flowers and laughter as legacy children and their families gathered to celebrate her transformation. "Remember how scared I was?" Emma asked, helping Sophia arrange refreshments. "I couldn't even smile without checking if it was allowed." Sophia hugged her friend. "And now look at you, teaching your own therapy classes." Indeed, Emma had blossomed into one of the Phoenix Project's most effective youth counselors. Her journey from rigid programming to authentic expression inspired new arrivals, showing them that genuine healing was possible. Lucas, setting up the sound system for their celebration, called out, "Emma, show them your new dance routine." The once hesitant girl now moved with confident grace, demonstrating the personalized therapy sequence she'd developed. It incorporated elements of the twins' original movements, but expressed her own unique style, a perfect metaphor for her recovery. Alexander's phone buzzed with updates from Victoria. Global legacy recovery rate now at 87%, Phoenix Network. Expanding to 3 new countries next quarter. But wait until you see this. The attached video showed scenes from Phoenix centers worldwide. Children who had once moved like programmed robots now danced, played, and laughed freely. Parents who had been forced to surrender their children to Project Legacy now led support groups, helping others rebuild family bonds. "It's amazing," Sarah said, joining him to watch the footage. Her own recovery had become a beacon of hope for other parents. "Sometimes I look at old photos and can hardly believe how far we've come." A commotion at the garden gate drew their attention. Eleanor had arrived with a surprise. Helena's daughter, Marie, who had recently come forward seeking help. The young woman, bearing her mother's elegant features but none of her cold control, stood nervously at the entrance. I wasn't sure. "I should come," Marie admitted. "After what my mother did." "You're not your mother," Sophia said firmly, taking Marie's hand. "You're yourself, and you're welcome here." Lucas joined them, offering Marie a Phoenix Project pin. "We all have stories to heal from. That's what makes us strong." Alexander watched as his children welcomed Helena's daughter with the same compassion they showed all survivors. Project Legacy had tried to turn them into perfect soldiers, but instead, they had become perfect examples of humanity's capacity for forgiveness and growth. His phone chimed again, Jack updating security protocols for the growing network. But the message that caught his attention came from an unexpected source. Tom Reed's teenage son requesting help through the Phoenix Project's youth outreach program. "The next generation," Victoria noted, seeing the message, "breaking free from their parents' legacy of control." As if to emphasize this point, Emma began teaching Marie the basic movements of Phoenix therapy. The daughter of Project Legacy's architect learning healing from one of its former subjects, a powerful symbol of transformation. Sarah squeezed Alexander's hand. "Look at our garden now. Remember when it was just a quiet place for the twins to practice?" Indeed, the space had evolved along with them. Meditation cushions shared ground. With art supplies, movement therapy areas flowed into conversation corners. The rigid perfection of its original design had softened into something organic and alive. "Mom! Dad!" Sophia called. "Emma wants to show everyone her graduation dance." They gathered around as Emma took center stage. Her performance combined elements from every stage of her recovery, the initial structured movements representing her legacy programming, gradually flowing into freer, more expressive gestures. Lucas provided musical accompaniment, playing the piano with natural talent that Project Legacy had tried to regiment into rigid perfection. Now his music, like Emma's dance, told a story of transformation. "This is for everyone still finding their way," Emma announced. "Remember, your story isn't over. It's just changing into something more beautiful." As she danced, other legacy children joined in, each adding their own interpretation to the basic forms. Parents watched with tears and smiles, seeing their children's authentic personalities shine through years of programming. Alexander's phone lit up with one final message: Eleanor sharing preliminary results from the Phoenix Project's latest research. Conclusive evidence that genuine human connection produces stronger, more stable results than any attempted programming. Your family's method is becoming the global standard for trauma recovery. Marie, watching the dancers with wonder, whispered, "Is this what my mother was afraid of? This freedom?" "Perhaps," Sarah replied gently. "Sometimes the hardest thing is letting go of our idea of perfect to embrace what's real." In the center of the garden, Emma's dance reached its crescendo. Her movements, once constrained by Project Legacy's rigid protocols, now flowed with natural grace. Other survivors moved with her, each in their own way, creating a spontaneous celebration of authentic expression. Sophia and Lucas joined the dance, their twin bond evident in their natural synchronization, but their individual personalities shining through every movement. This was the truth Project Legacy had failed to understand, that the strongest connections come not from control, but from freedom. As the sun set over São Paulo, casting golden light through the garden trees, Alexander watched his children dance with their friends, each survivor adding their own story to the greater narrative of healing and hope. They had planted seeds of change in this garden. And all over the world, through the Phoenix Network, those seeds were blooming into something more beautiful than Project Legacy could have ever engineered: the natural, perfect chaos of genuine human connection. The early morning sun painted São Paulo in shades of gold as Alexander stood in his home office, reviewing the latest Phoenix Project reports. 2 years had passed since Sophia had first grabbed his sleeve on that fateful street corner, setting in motion changes that would transform countless lives. His phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. "Turn on the news. Something you need to see." The global headlines announced the final chapter in Project Legacy's story. Helena Castello, speaking from federal custody, had issued a public statement. Not a defense or denial, but something unexpected, an apology. "I was wrong," her recorded message played. "In pursuing perfection through control, we lost sight of the true perfect design, the natural human capacity for love, growth, and connection. What the Phoenix Project has achieved through freedom and authentic healing has proven that my life's work was fundamentally flawed." Sarah entered with their morning coffee, catching the end of Helena's statement. Marie said her mother had been different lately, more human. "The Phoenix therapy is working even for her," Alexander mused. Even Project Legacy's architect was finding her way back to authentic emotion. Their conversation was interrupted by sounds from the garden. The twins were up early, practicing their morning routine. But today, they weren't alone. Emma and Marie had stayed overnight after yesterday's celebration, and all 4 teenagers moved together in the dawn light. Through the window, Alexander and Sarah watched their children guide Helena's daughter through gentle movements designed to release years of rigid control. Marie's face showed the same wonder they'd seen in so many legacy children discovering their own rhythm for the first time. "Dad, Mom," Sophia called, spotting them. "Come see what Marie created." In the garden, Marie demonstrated her own variation of Phoenix therapy, movements that acknowledged her legacy background while embracing a new path forward. Her dance told the story of transformation, of a daughter finding her own way despite her mother's shadow. "It's about breaking patterns," Marie explained softly. "Not just the ones they programmed into us, but the ones we inherited. The ones we thought were normal until we saw another way." Lucas nodded, understanding. "Like how we thought perfect meant never making mistakes." "When really," Sophia added, "perfect is being brave enough to try new things, even if we do them imperfectly." Alexander's phone chimed with updates from Phoenix centers worldwide. The network now spanned 27 countries, each facility adapting the core therapy principles to local cultures while maintaining the essential focus on authentic expression and natural connection. Emma, who had become like a third child to the Morgans, pulled up her own phone to share news. Her latest therapy technique had been officially adopted by the Phoenix Project's global training program. The girl who once couldn't smile without permission was now teaching others to rediscover their joy. "Look what came for you," Sarah said, bringing out a package that had arrived earlier. Inside was a book, the first comprehensive study of the Phoenix Project's impact on global child psychology, dedicated to the Morgan twins, who showed us that true perfection lies in being perfectly ourselves. Sophia and Lucas examined the book with interest, finding their story woven throughout its pages. But more importantly, they found the stories of countless others who had followed their path from programming to authenticity. "It's strange," Lucas reflected. "Project Legacy tried to make us special by controlling us, but we were already special. All of us, just by being who we are." "That's what we teach now," Emma agreed. "Not how to be perfect, but how to be real." Marie wiped away tears. "My mother spent her life trying to engineer the perfect human connection. She never understood. It was already there, in every natural bond between parent and child, between siblings, between friends." As if to demonstrate this truth, Sophia spontaneously hugged Marie, while Lucas and Emma added their own embraces. The daughter of Project Legacy's creator, surrounded by love that no program could replicate. Alexander's phone lit up one final time. Elena sharing footage from the Geneva Center's latest breakthrough. Legacy children teaching their therapy techniques to kids with no connection to the program, spreading healing beyond their immediate community. "That's the real legacy," Sarah said softly, watching the teenagers support each other through new movement combinations. Not what they tried to create, but what naturally grew from its ashes. In the garden, now bathed in full morning light, the four young people began their day's practice. Each moved in their own way while maintaining natural harmony with the group. Their faces showed concentration, but also joy, effort, but also peace. This was what Project Legacy had failed to understand, what Helena had finally recognized, that perfection wasn't found in control or programming, but in the beautiful, messy, authentic experience of being human. Sophia and Lucas, the twins who had sparked this revolution of the heart, demonstrated their latest therapy sequence. Their movements flowed together naturally, their bond evident but not forced, their individual personalities shining through. Every gesture. Emma and Marie followed, each adding their own interpretation to the basic forms. Four young people, each marked by Project Legacy in different ways, each finding their path to healing through genuine connection. And in watching them, Alexander and Sarah saw the truth that had always been there, waiting to be discovered. That love, freely given and genuinely expressed, was the most perfect force in the universe. The Phoenix Project would continue to grow, to heal, to transform. But its greatest achievement was visible right here, in this garden where a family's love had grown strong enough to help heal the world. Perfect, not in spite of their imperfections, but because of them. Complete, not through programming, but through freedom. Whole, not by design, but by choice. This was their legacy, a gift of truth, passing from heart to heart, growing more perfect with every authentic beat. 3 years to the day since Sophia had first grabbed Alexander's sleeve on that busy São Paulo street, the Morgan family stood together in front of the city's newest Phoenix Center. This facility was special, built not just for therapy and healing, but as a monument to transformation. The modern building incorporated elements from every Phoenix Center worldwide: Japanese Zen gardens, Swiss mountain views recreated in virtual reality spaces, Indian meditation rooms, and Brazilian outdoor therapy areas, but its heart was the central atrium, where a wall of photographs told the story of Project Legacy's fall and the Phoenix Network's rise. "Hard to believe it all started with you being brave enough to ask for help," Alexander said to Sophia, who stood tall and confident beside her brother. "I wasn't brave," she replied thoughtfully. "I was desperate, but sometimes that's enough to change everything." Lucas squeezed his sister's hand. The twins, now 10 years old, had grown into natural leaders in the Phoenix community. Their initial therapy techniques had evolved into a comprehensive healing program, helping hundreds of legacy children find their authentic voices. Sarah, fully recovered, and now the Phoenix Project's head of family services, watched a group of new arrivals enter the building. "Remember how scared we all were in the beginning? How impossible everything seemed?" Alexander's phone buzzed with updates from Victoria. Final statistics confirmed. Project Legacy officially dismantled worldwide. All known facilities converted to Phoenix centers, recovery rate holding at 94%. But more meaningful than the statistics were the scenes unfolding around them. In the center's various therapy spaces, legacy children moved through their healing journeys, each at their own pace, each in their own way. Parents learned to trust again, to love without fear, to support without controlling. Emma, now one of their most successful therapists, led a group of teenagers through an advanced movement sequence. Among them was Marie, her grace and strength showing no trace of her mother's rigid programming. "Ms. Helena asked to see this," Victoria said quietly, joining them with her tablet. "She's been following the Phoenix Project's progress from federal custody." The former Project Legacy architect had become an unexpected ally in their healing work, providing insights that helped them understand and reverse the programming more effectively. Her own journey from control to compassion had become part of the Phoenix story. "Dad," Sophia called excitedly, "come see what we've added to the memorial wall." The newest installation was a simple photograph, Sophia and Alexander on that first day, captured by a security camera at the moment she reached for his hand. Beside it, a series of images showed their family's journey, the twins reunited, Sarah's recovery, the growth of the Phoenix Network. "It's perfect," Lucas said, studying the display. "Not because everything went perfectly, but because it shows how real change happens, one brave choice at a time." Alexander's phone chimed with another message, Eleanor sharing news from Geneva. The United Nations had just ratified the Phoenix Protocol, establishing global standards for protecting children from psychological manipulation. The document cited the Morgan twins case as its founding inspiration. "You know what today is?" Sarah asked softly. "It's the anniversary of when you asked Alexander to be your daddy for one day." Sophia smiled. "Best question I ever asked." "Best answer I ever gave," Alexander replied, pulling his daughter close. Through the center's windows, São Paulo sparkled in the afternoon sun. Somewhere in those streets, another child might be gathering the courage to ask for help. Another family might be finding their way to healing. Another story of transformation might be beginning. His phone lit up one last time, a message from Jack. "Security report complete. Project Legacy influence fully neutralized. But more importantly, look at this." The attached video showed Phoenix centers around the world celebrating their own anniversaries of liberation. Children who had once moved like programmed robots now danced with natural joy. Parents who had been forced to surrender their children now helped others rebuild trust. In Tokyo, survivors performed healing dances that blended Phoenix therapy with traditional arts. In Geneva, former legacy children taught new arrivals to find their own rhythm. In Mumbai, families gathered in therapy gardens similar to the Morgans, sharing stories of recovery and hope. "This is the real legacy," Victoria observed, watching the global celebrations. "Not what they tried to build through control, but what grew naturally through love." Emma approached with a group of new children, their movements still showing traces of programming, but their eyes bright with hope. "Would you tell them," she asked the twins, "about how it all began?" Sophia and Lucas exchanged glances, then led, the group to the memorial wall. As they began sharing their story, Alexander watched his children's natural grace, their genuine empathy, their perfect imperfection. Project Legacy had tried to create perfect soldiers through rigid control. Instead, they had inspired the creation of something far more powerful, a worldwide network of healing built on the simple truth that love, freely given and authentically expressed, was the strongest force in the universe. Sarah slipped her hand into his as they watched their children guide others toward freedom. "One day," she whispered, "that's all you promised." "Best promise I ever kept," Alexander replied, holding his family close as they witnessed their personal miracle multiply into countless others, each perfect in its own authentic way. On a quiet Sunday evening, the Morgan family gathered in their garden for their weekly tradition. The space had grown even more beautiful over the years, filled with flowers from around the world, gifts from Phoenix centers in every country where their story had helped others heal. Sophia and Lucas, surrounded by their extended Phoenix family, led their signature therapy session. Emma and Marie moved alongside them, while new legacy children watched and learned. Parents sat in peaceful circles, sharing stories and support, their faces reflecting the journey from fear to freedom. Alexander stood with Sarah, watching their miracle multiply. "Remember when this was just a small meditation space? And now it's a symbol of hope," she replied, gesturing to the families gathered there. "Just like our story." Victoria appeared with her tablet, but for once, she wasn't bringing updates or statistics. Instead, she showed them something special, a collection of thank you messages from Phoenix survivors worldwide. Children who had found their voices, parents who had rebuilt trust, families who had learned to love without fear. The Phoenix Network is more than centers and programs. Now, Victoria said softly, it's become a movement, a revolution of the heart. Elena joined them, her researcher's precision softened by years of witnessing genuine healing. "We finally finished analyzing all of Project Legacy's data," she reported. "You know what we found? Their fundamental premise wasn't just flawed, it was the opposite of truth. The strongest human connections aren't created through control, they're born of freedom." As if to demonstrate this, Sophia and Lucas began teaching a new movement sequence to the group. Each person interpreted it differently, adding their own style while maintaining natural harmony with the whole. The garden filled with music and laughter, the sound of authentic joy that no program could replicate. Alexander's phone lit up one final time. A message from the United Nations Committee, Phoenix Protocol officially implemented worldwide. Estimated impact, millions of children protected. All thanks to one little girl's courage to ask for help. "Dad, Mom," Sophia called. "It's time." The family joined the circle as Lucas explained their new therapy technique, a combination of movement, music, and storytelling designed to help legacy survivors share their experiences. But more than therapy, it was a celebration of freedom, of authentic expression, of perfect imperfection. "Remember what Miss Helena used to say?" Marie asked, her voice strong and clear. "That perfection meant complete control? She was wrong. This is perfection, being brave enough to be real." Emma nodded, guiding a new child through gentle movements. "Perfect isn't about never making mistakes. It's about having the courage to try, to feel, to love." As the sun set over São Paulo, casting golden light through the garden trees, Alexander watched his children lead their extended family in a dance of healing and hope. Sophia and Lucas moved with natural grace, their twin bond evident, but not forced, their individual personalities shining through every gesture. Sarah squeezed his hand. "One day," she whispered, "that's all Sophia asked for. And look what that one day created," he replied, gesturing to the gathered families, the global network, the worldwide movement that had grown from a single child's desperate plea. Victoria's tablet showed Phoenix centers around the world joining in similar celebrations. In every facility, survivors danced their own versions of the twins therapy, each culture adding its unique expression to the universal language of healing. "This is what Project Legacy never understood," Elena observed. "You can't program perfection. You can only create the conditions for it to grow naturally through love and freedom. The garden glowed with lantern light as evening deepened. Children, who had once moved like robots, now danced with spontaneous joy. Parents who had been forced to surrender their children now held them close, teaching them to trust their own hearts. Sophia and Lucas gathered everyone for the final dance, celebration of authentic connection that had become the Phoenix Network's signature. As families moved together, each in their own way but united in purpose, Alexander remembered that moment 3 years ago when a desperate child had grabbed his sleeve. "Be my daddy for one day," she had asked. One day had become forever. One child's courage had sparked a global transformation. One family's journey had shown countless others the way home to themselves. This was their perfect legacy, not engineered through control, but grown through love, not programmed, but freely chosen, not uniform, but beautifully, perfectly unique. As the stars appeared above São Paulo, the Morgan family held each other close, surrounded by their extended Phoenix family. In gardens and centers around the world, other families did the same, each adding their own story to the greater narrative of healing and hope. Project Legacy had tried to create perfect soldiers through rigid control. Instead, they had inspired something far more powerful. The perfect truth that love, freely given and authentically expressed, was the strongest force in the universe. And in that truth lay the most beautiful legacy of all, the simple, profound miracle of being perfectly, authentically human.